Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm closing the nominee's resume for your convenience. We will start the hearing with witnesses in favor of the nominee. And I believe we have the esteemed Judge Dalton. Would you like to come and speak with us? Good morning, Judge. Great to see you. Thank you for your continued service.
Happy to be able to. Councillor Duff, members of the Governor's Council, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Fairleigh Dalton. I currently serve as a recall judge with the Housing Court. And thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the nomination of Attorney Eduardo Gonzalez as an Associate Justice of the Housing Court. I've known Attorney Gonzalez since early 2014. He represented landlords in eviction cases in the Housing Court. He appeared before me regularly over the next 5 years on motions and trials. He demonstrated 3 traits throughout that time that would make him an excellent judge if he were confirmed. First, he was very knowledgeable about landlord-tenant law, but not just the laws and regulations, but also the practical implications for both sides in an eviction case. He represented a number of landlords who owned government-subsidized buildings, and their federal and state regulations and procedural guidelines can be quite complex, but he always explained them in clear English without minimizing the legal technicalities. Second, he was a very good trial lawyer. He knew the rules of evidence. He was always well prepared, and his clients and witnesses were well prepared. I always thought that his earlier experience as a civil litigator enhanced his skills when he came to the Housing Court. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Attorney Gonzalez has the demeanor and attitude that would make him an effective judge. He was always respectful to other attorneys, to self-represented litigants, and to court staff. He represented landlords, but he was also fair to tenants. He did not ask for the impossible. He tried to reach a resolution that considered both sides' position and was workable for the landlord and the tenant both. In March of 2019, the Northeast Housing Court hired Attorney Gonzalez as a housing specialist. As the first justice at the time, I was thrilled. The housing specialist's role is to mediate cases and to respond to litigants' questions about landlord-tenant law and the legal process. He made his skills and knowledge available to his fellow housing specialists as well as litigants. He was respectful, even when a litigant was not respectful to him, as sometimes happens in these highly charged cases. He maintained a dignity and decorum that could diffuse the situation and then refocus the parties towards resolution. Less than a year later, Attorney Gonzalez was hired as an assistant clerk magistrate in the Northeast Division, and very soon thereafter as the first assistant clerk magistrate. He continued to interact with the public, but he also ran courtroom sessions. He heard and decided small claims cases and probable cause hearings in code enforcement cases. He supervised others in the clerk's office. He filled all those roles with the same work ethic and demeanor that he had demonstrated as a practicing attorney. He's well respected by the staff and the attorneys with whom he interacts. It was a privilege to have Attorney Gonzalez appear in our court through the years. It was a privilege and an honor for me to work with him in the court, and I'm sure that he will be an asset to the court and to the people of the Commonwealth in the years ahead if he is confirmed as a judge of the Housing Court. I ask you to vote for his confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Councilor Kennedy.
Judge, it's good to see you. I don't do housing. You've never seen me near the housing court. Hopefully you never will, because my wife's evicting me. But I have spoken to people about the nominee, including my friend Judge Kelleher, my very good friend, who had some great things to say about him. I did get a late last night. It was sent to me after 11 o'clock, and I read it with the decision attached, and I read the 5 o'clock this morning. And you know, I don't understand the issues that come up, during these types of cases, but this was a case that involved apparently a landlord tenant situation. I remember some of the language from law school, like warranty of habitability and breach of quiet enjoyment, but I have to go back that far to try to remember. It was an Eastern Housing Court case, I'm looking at it on my phone, Michelle Holdings LLC versus Kim Johnson and Sarah Ostrovsky. The lawyers who handled this case did not send this to me. It was other people that sent it to me. And it was a little disconcerting. I don't understand it, but I'm going to ask you about it, and I'm going to ask the nominee about it. It was apparently some type of eviction, but it was a extremely large award. Nominee represented the plaintiffs of attorney's fees. I was a little shocked when I saw the amount. I'm going to pull it up, and part of the reason for it was that, and it says, the court finds that the efforts required by counsel as a result of plaintiff's tactics impacted the number of hours spent litigating the matter, not with the complexity of the case itself. So basically, there was the judge who decided this case made a finding that this nominee engaged in tactics that were designed to delay and designed to resist answering simple discovery requests, is the way it was put. And it resulted in a extremely large judgment, in my opinion, against the landlord. I think the attorney's fees were like $65,000 for what sounds like a simple eviction. How often do you see that in housing court, that kind of, number one, has it been your experience with this nominee when he was a lawyer that he would engage in tactics that would delay a case, at least to match it up like that?
I have to say it was not my experience at all. I found him to be very reasonable in terms of discovery and in terms of the procedure in the housing court.
Well, what
Cases that I had with him.
What about, I mean, the judgment here was $65,300. Attorney's fees were $160,497.50. Does that sound out of whack to you? It does to me.
It seems like a very high award of attorney's fees. I've never awarded that much in attorney's fees, I will say.
I'd only want you to do that if I was on the receiving end, Judge.
Indeed.
But it just strikes me that there's something about that. I only read it this morning, and I don't know the law. And somebody sent it to me, a lawyer that had nothing to do with the case. And they also, and I'm not going to disclose who it was, but they also said there was a couple of other cases with large awards for the same reason involving this particular nominee. I spoke with him. I like him, but it does, you know, I have questions because of this. And I did, and I would have talked to him about it before, but I read it this morning.
I think I'm not familiar with the details of this case. I will say, however, that there certainly is a perception that eviction cases are simple, or they should be simple.
Well, that's what
They very often are not.
the judge said it was a simple case.
I have a feeling there were some complexities to it.
Well, I just read the line that she used. And I'm going to mispronounce her name, Maria Theophilus.
Theophilus, yes. Theophilus, yes.
That's what she said, that it wasn't the complexity of the case, it was a relatively simple case. What drove up the attorney's fees were the tactics of the plaintiff. That's her finding. I'm not, I don't know.
And I'm not familiar with the details of the case, certainly. But in many cases, in many eviction cases, not the majority of eviction cases, but certainly in many eviction cases, they do become complicated. And attorneys have the obligation to represent their client.
100%. 100%. And the judge made findings that the defense lawyers were very professional and did their job in an appropriate manner. He actually said that. But didn't seem to feel the other side acted. Man, I don't know anything about the case. To me, bed at 5 o'clock this morning. Which also tells you I have to get a life early in the
I
morning.
was gonna say, Counselor.
And I would just say,
Thank you, Judge. I'll address it with the nominee.
also say, Councilor Kennedy, you'd be very welcome in Housing
I
Court.
don't want to come.
There's a reason why. Any other questions from the councilors? Councilor Devaney?
Thank you. Good morning. Proud vote. Thank you. It's difficult in housing right now. This is the biggest issue that people talk to me about. Okay, given all of his qualifications, and you've talked about a lot of his traits, could you think of one trait that is outstanding that he brings to the court?
I have to say, it's perhaps a somewhat subjective trait, but I think I really have been impressed by his demeanor and the way he handles himself. And I think that in a court where sometimes landlords become aggressive or assertive because their rights are important, especially with small landlords, Attorney Gonzalez has always been able to treat people with an even hand. And I think as a judge, that would be one of the most important characteristics.
I imagine it's very volatile for a landlord or a tenant, what they're going through, so I can imagine you have to have the right temperament and demeanor. Thank you, that means a lot to me. Thank you for coming, good to see you.
Thank you very much, Judge. Our next witness will be Edward Whitesell, Esquire, from the City of Boston Law Department, also known as Ted.
Thank you. I've known Eduardo, as Eddie, since 2007 when he came to work at a law firm where I was working at the time, Adler, Pollock and Sheehan. I worked with Eddie for 4 years. I had been at Adler for a few years at that point, but I have the ability to testify both to Eddie's qualifications as a lawyer and as a friend, and to Eddie's character in both regards. First, as an attorney, I know Eddie to be someone who has several traits that I think are very important in judges, and I appear in front of them regularly. First and foremost, I would agree with the judge who just spoke about Eddie's demeanor. Eddie is a very calm-headed, thoughtful person. I think Eddie approaches issues thoughtfully. I don't think that he rushes to decisions, and I think he's very thorough in the way he approaches his work. The second thing is I think Eddie's very intelligent, and I think Eddie gives thought to issues from both sides and considers both sides of every issue. Even as an advocate, I think it's one of the important things we do as advocates is to understand the other side's position. And the most important trait I think that Eddie had while he was at Adler Pollock was he was hardworking. And an anecdote that came to mind when I was thinking about this, we had a case in front of Judge Young in federal court, and we made the mistake of asking for injunctive relief, which, if anybody's been in front of Judge Young, immediately accelerates your case to trial in a short period. This was a complex business litigation case. All hands were on deck. It was over Easter weekend. We had gone in for an injunctive relief and filed a complaint on one day, and we found ourselves in court for trial 2 weeks later. Eddie wasn't even assigned to the case, but it was all hands on deck. He stayed throughout the weekend over Easter. He worked hard, and we were able to get that case prepared for trial. So I know Eddie would work hard at being a judge, and I just think everything about what I know about his professional experience would make him an excellent judge. I also know Eddie as a friend. He and I have remained friends since Eddie left Adler, Pollock and Sheehan in 2011. He continued to work downtown. We continued to see each other. I know his wife. I know his family. I have invited him to my baby shower for my 2-year-old, and Eddie attended that. So I've known Eddie for a very long time. I know him to be of the highest character. I know him to be a family man, and I know him to be very fair. And I think one of the most important things you can be as a judge is to be fair. So I couldn't think of a better person to be a judge of all the people I've met in my time in private practice. And I echo what the judge said about Eddie's demeanor. I do think that's the most important trait that a judge can have, is that fairness, demeanor, and level-headedness. And I think Eddie has always displayed that with me. So I could not be more in favor of this nomination as Associate Judge of the Housing Court.
Thank you, Attorney. Questions?
So he was at Adela Pollock in 07 to 11?
I believe so, yes.
Do any housing court work at Adela?
I believe there was some housing court work there, but no, I did not. I was not a housing court litigator. I have not had a lot of practice in housing court. I've represented a few landlords, but later on in my career at Berluti, McLaughlin, and Cutchin.
You ever see the nominee do any trial work?
Trial work, I don't believe I worked directly with Eddie on any trial work, no.
Do you know if he's tried any cases?
Don't, I know he's done eviction cases since. I assume he's tried cases, but that's before, that would be after the time that I worked with him. I know personally that he went on to work for a firm that did eviction work, and I know that he's done trial work there. But I didn't have any personal interaction with Eddie as a trial attorney. Frankly, at that time, I was a young associate. Eddie was a young associate. We did a lot of litigation, but not a lot of trial work. I do a lot more trial work now as I've advanced in my career. We did try cases, but I don't recall whether Eddie and I tried any cases at Adler together.
Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Devaney?
Thank you for coming.
No problem.
I appreciate it because you really have a lot of knowledge about this nominee. So you work together as lawyers. Tell me what you observed about him in his demeanor, with how he treated people. Just tell me generally what you saw.
Eddie is one of the nicest guys I know, but in his professional practice, he was always professional. He was very good with clients. I've seen him in court on motions and motion practice. He's very level-headed, very calm. And like I said, I think one of the biggest things he brought to the work that he did in private practice was how hardworking he was. Eddie is one of, and remains one of the hardest working people I've ever worked with.
As far as litigation, is there anything that stands out that you remember, something that he did that you thought was outstanding?
Eddie's very, I mean, just as a general, from a general sense, Eddie's very well spoken. I don't remember any particular instances of litigation, but I was always impressed by Eddie's ability to sit down and think about an issue and really look at it from both sides before, and we were advocates, so you're not always trying to consider the other side's point of view. But I do think Eddie always did anticipate what the other side was going to do. And I think that ability to see both sides of a legal argument will serve him well as a judge.
Your testimony means a lot, and great witnesses to see both sides in the court and as a lawyer working with you. Thank you so much for testifying.
Thank you. Step away.
you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to testify in favor? Is there anyone here that would like to testify against? Raise your hand. Hearing none, it's going to be time for your statement. Would you like to introduce anyone here that you brought with you today?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Aside from the witnesses, and I'd like to thank both witnesses for speaking on my behalf, I've also brought my wife, Angela Perez. She and I are parents of two boys who unfortunately could not be here this morning, but she's the other person I brought.
Thank you very much. You may make your statement, Attorney Gonzalez.
Thank her for being here too. Good morning, members of the Governor's Council. I thank you, the Governor, the Lieutenant Governor, and the members of the Judicial Nominating Committee for the opportunity to appear before you this morning. I was born in San Jose, Costa Rica. My father is from Guatemala, and my mother is from Costa Rica. I met in San Jose and decided to emigrate to this country when I was only 1 year old. Father's first job in this country was as a gardener, an apartment complex, and perhaps the best perk that job provided was for an apartment for our family in the same complex where my father worked. In time, our family grew as my two sisters were born, and my grandmother came to live with us as well. My parents and my family emphasized the importance of succeeding in school as the best way of improving myself. However, they also emphasized the importance of helping one another, a duty to family, and the society and country where I was growing up. As time passed, I was lucky enough to succeed in school. I attended Cornell University undergraduate, Boston University Law School, and then became a lawyer. My legal career began in Salem, Massachusetts, and when I was still young, still a young lawyer there, I had the good fortune to meet the woman who would become my wife. Angela was raised in Spain and came to Massachusetts for what she thought would be a 2-year stint as a visiting teacher in the Salem public school system. 17 years later, she remains in Massachusetts working as a Spanish teacher at the Swampscott High School. Our world is wrapped up in our two boys, Eduardo, age 12, and Alejandro, age 10. Who are the glorious, rambunctious characters two young men should be. They, along with their mother, are the light of my life, and we all live together in Danvers, Massachusetts. I practiced law in Massachusetts for 15 years before joining the housing court as a housing specialist. At the time, I became an assistant clerk magistrate, and now first assistant clerk magistrate for the Northeast Housing Court. The need to think on my feet and apply what I had learned to the situation at hand was an aspect of the practice of law I greatly enjoyed. However, joining the trial court provided the most satisfying professional experience I ever had. As a housing specialist, I was able to apply the knowledge I gained through 15 years of practicing law to help parties resolve cases and narrow the issues. As an assistant clerk, I serve a similar role. When I hear small claims cases, or when I interact with lawyers or pro se litigants. I view the opportunity to serve as an associate justice in the housing court as a great honor and the best way for me to serve the public. My professional and life experience through this point has provided a strong foundation for this role. I was born in a different country, came to this country at a very young age, and learned to speak Spanish at home before I learned to speak English at school. I knew that I was not like the other children with whom I went to school simply because of my background. This taught me to be patient and to listen. It taught me to draw my own conclusion after having observed a situation and not to prejudge any person or situation. These traits have served me well in life, and I believe they will serve me well if I am lucky enough to be appointed to the bench. I greatly enjoy working for the trial court, and I am confident that as a judge, I would gain the opportunity to apply my skills to a greater degree while still serving the public. I want to become a judge for the challenge it presents and to be given the opportunity to serve the public to the best of my ability. Serving the court and the public as a judge would be the honor of a lifetime. I thank you for allowing me to be here before you today.
Thank you very much. Council Kennedy.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
I'm not trying to, I got that case last night. I actually, it was emailed to me last night. I read it this morning. I opened my email this morning. I've gotten a lot of calls about you that were all three judges and other people. You know, I always take things with a grain of salt when I get things at the last minute and wonder, but can you just address that issue? I mean, it's a case you'll remember, you get whacked. We've all been lawyers that have, this judge is out to lunch with his judgment, you know? Nothing personal, Your Honor. But and it's certainly something you'd remember, because you got whacked pretty hard on that one. Was it a simple, do you remember it?
Oh, yes, sir. No, I remember it very well.
Was it a simple eviction case?
No, sir, it was not.
What was it?
So that case was atypical in a number of ways.
Okay.
First of all, the initial summary process case started in 2013. It didn't get tried until 2018.
So it says that in the decision.
By that point,
It surprised me as well. My eyes popped out at that.
possession was moot. All that was at issue
It says that in the decision too.
were the monetary claims between the parties. It was extremely complex, and that litigation lasted 5 years. There was a lot of motion practice, a lot of depositions, and
I've actually dealt with those lawyers myself on one case. They're very aggressive, I know that. But
I have nothing bad to say about the lawyers.
very professional, but they were very aggressive. They worked very hard for their clients, I guess is a better way to put it. But
There was zealous advocacy on both sides, by my firm and by the other side. To put it succinctly, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, it was a jury trial, so to answer Council Ferreira's question to Mr. Whitesell from before, yes, I've tried cases, and this was a 5-day jury trial in Eastern Housing Court, which is extremely atypical.
decision, the jury didn't, the jury addressed the issue of the judgment, which was about 65,000. But the judge determined the attorney's fees and costs. That's the way I read it.
Yes, sir. There was a 93A count, which the judge reserved to herself. And what you read was part of her decision on that. Respectfully, I disagree with her assessment. Additionally, the timing on that particular decision overlaps with my joining the trial court. So I joined the trial court after that case had concluded, but before the decisions on ending the case had come down. So by the time that those final decisions came down, I'm already out. So
You're not appealing.
I was not part of the appeal team, no.
Was it appealed? Do you know?
I believe it was, yes, but not by me. I don't know, sir.
What about that language she used that I just, and I'll reread it to you. Find it here. I apologize, I only have it on my phone. Language in the decision said, the court finds that the efforts required by counsel, talking about defense counsel in this case, I guess, as a result of plaintiff's tactics, impacted the number of hours litigating the matter and not the complexity of the case itself.
I disagree with that assessment. If that's what the judge wrote, I'm sure that's what she wrote.
In the decision.
I remember the litigation and the discovery and just to have depositions at all in a summary process housing court case is.
I have a huge problem. I have a huge problem with $165,000 on attorney's fees on a $65,000 judgment. Something's out of whack there, no matter how you look at it. Okay, no matter who's responsible for it. That's just crazy money for what is a smaller case. Attorney's fees shouldn't be 3 times the value of the case, in my opinion, but almost ever. But that's kind of harsh language directed at you, right?
I disagree with your, I'm sorry, I agree with your assessment of the attorney's fees. What you said.
I think it's out of line. My opinion is she's probably wrong, but
And then,
not issue on the amount, okay? But just the language in terms of the tactics that she attributes to you, I don't know what they were, it just says the tactics.
I think taking that language in a In a vacuum, yes, it does appear critical of me. But
It's unusual for a judge to do that, in my opinion. They don't usually,
I'm not aware of it happening in housing court before. I agree with you, but I don't take it to heart. I mean, I don't think she was, I know her. I've seen her since, and I don't believe she has any particular problem with me. And
that one line in that decision struck me as really harsh.
I-
Justified or not, it's unusual for a judge to be that harsh on a lawyer.
I agree with you.
But as I said, I've spoken to a lot of folks about you that have called me, and they had nothing but good things to say. So, I'm all set, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Council DiPaolo.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I've also heard a lot of communication positive about you. I'm interested in temperament for any judge, and responding to tough questions is one test of it, without a doubt. You've dealt with pro se litigants in your current role, I presume, and would if you were to take this new role.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm curious what your threshold would be for holding someone in contempt in your court. What kind of extraordinary, strike that, would it be an extraordinary case where you were to hold someone in contempt?
Yes, sir. It would be, they would need to show extreme disrespect to the court or to someone, someone that is justifiably in the court, say, for example, a witness or a member of the court staff.
I've never practiced in housing court. In my limited exposure to it, I've seen people who are very emotionally on edge when they come in, and I suppose that's why I ask, is that true with what happens in the Northeast?
Absolutely. And I can speak to that if you like.
Yes, please go ahead.
So,
Saves me from formulating questions.
all right, so imagine what my job was before. I represented the landlord, right? And I show up in court and there's someone that's facing in their head, they think that they're going to be moved out the next day. From the initial exposure that I had with those litigants, yes, I had an agenda, but usually it was to work something out. And I would talk them off the ledge. I would speak to them in the same tone I'm talking to you right now. To make a long story short, I continued to do that when I was a housing specialist, and I do it now as an assistant clerk. There is an importance to realizing what the motivation behind the conduct that you're witnessing, where that comes from. And 9 times out of 10, in my experience, the person that's exhibiting that behavior is scared. And it goes a very long way to putting them at ease. It's not very often, and I don't think I've ever seen it, where it's addressed in that manner and it doesn't get diffused. And certainly within my experience, I was able to do that.
Excellent. In past housing court committee hearings, we've heard from folks who are, I guess, concerned mainly about foreclosures and how it impacts people. And some of the testimony we heard, again, not being a housing court expert, seems to me to be people in tough situations, facing tough outcomes and realities that sometimes have to happen. Is it hard to remain dispassionate when people are losing their homes or facing eviction? What's your emotional response to that, or how do you balance that?
It is very difficult, sir. Of course, you're dealing with something which is very important to the person. Ultimately, you might decide that they no longer get to stay in the place they woke up in. I take that very seriously. But it's a balancing act in judging the merits of the party that's bringing the case, seeking possession, and go ahead.
I was going to ask, in your role as housing specialist, perhaps, but for the public interest, because there are folks interested in housing court, are there resources or guess I'll say resources available to folks who are coming in pro se? I mean, are there resources to guide them through the process when they do find themselves there?
Yes, sir. Massachusetts is lucky in that it has a number of legal aid groups, which are extremely effective and very good at their jobs. In my region, it's the Northeast Legal Aid. In this area here, it's Greater Boston Legal Services.
Sure.
They exist throughout the entire state.
Now, in other parts of the state besides Worcester, are they stretched pretty thin as far as someone who is seeking counsel? It might be very difficult to.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah,
Are there any challenges in the housing court that you think could be improved, whether it's on the judicial side or legislative process, in terms of process?
The housing court, in my opinion, is doing an amazing job right now with the task cat issue. There are thousands of cases which get filed. The success comes from the top down, from the leadership, from Judge Sullivan, who provides incredible leadership, down to all the people working in the court staff. The work that they do day in and day out to process those cases is really amazing, and I see it every day. The only thing that would be great is if somehow there was more resource available to all people, the legal aid societies, the court staff, the volunteer lawyers that represent the landlords. Everyone is stretched to the maximum, but doing their best and still doing it day in and day out.
Yeah, it seems to me the thing we know, we do such a good job in Massachusetts, we could stand to bump up our resources in public defenders in the criminal court, community legal aid organizations in other areas. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Hurley?
Yes. Yes.
Your turn.
Thank you. We had a great talk. And in terms of the housing court, I did a little bit of my practice way back when. And the one place I knew I did not want to do practice was in housing court because of the emotional issues. And sometimes you see a good tenant getting really a raw deal by a bad landlord. Sometimes there's good landlords who get taken over the coals by a bad tenant. And the thing that I'm concerned about is whether or not you have balance. And we talked about that, and I'm satisfied that you get it. And other than that, I also have resources that I can call in the housing court to say, what's this fellow really all about? And your reputation is that you are a hard worker, you are a fair and balanced person in terms of your approach, and I think you're going to do a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Fiera?
Thank you. So I also read that decision that Councilor Kennedy was talking about, and, just to quote the judge, it says, the above are just examples of tactics employed by the plaintiff during the 5 years of litigation in which were on display during the 5-year trial. It says the plaintiff was an obstructionist, and that's why it took 5 years and $160,000 in lawyer's fees. What do you say to that? The judge saying that the plaintiff was an obstructionist, didn't prepare people for depositions properly, took 6 months to schedule one deposition. The guy showed up without information that was pertinent to the case, and all of this became relevant at the trial, and that's why the fees were so high.
I disagree with the judge. I don't think that's what occurred. Like I said to Councilor Kennedy, there was a great deal of discovery in that case on both sides, and the judge.
How much did the plaintiffs sue for originally? What was it wasn't a long period of time of rent they were looking for, was it?
If I remember correctly, the countersuit was for breach of quiet enjoyment, and it was a couple $1,000s.
So this case started with the landlord being owed a couple of $1,000 And the lawyers on the other side walk away with 160,000? Is that what happened?
Over time, that's what happened, yes, sir. Now, that case predates, dated me, that is to say, I'm not the attorney that started the case, the law firm where I worked.
You didn't advise a client going into it as far as security deposits, things like that. But at the end of the day, a landlord's owed a couple of $1,000s. And 5 years later, the landlord's paying $160,000 to the other side.
That's effectively what happened, sir. Yes, I mean, there was, obviously, that was not the outcome that was desired. And it's possible that that trial would have gone the other way. Unfortunately, it didn't.
Do you think some lawyers were taking advantage of the system?
No, sir.
You think that's okay in our legal system, that a landlord sues for $2,000 and at the end of the day, they're paying out $160,000?
It would pay 225 or 230.
$225,000?
Well, I think it's okay. I don't understand your question, sir.
Well, let me ask it again then. Do you think that that's a legitimate verdict in our system, in the housing court, that a landlord is owed $2,000 and sues for $2,000, and at the end of the day, gets whacked with a bill for $225,000?
No, I do not. And if I had been the judge on that case, I would not have made that decision. Like I indicated to Judge, Counselor Kennedy before, I disagree with the judge's decision.
I think it's outrageous. I can't ever find any justification for a case being worked up like that. I just think it's deplorable on all fronts. So I see that you, is it fair to say you didn't do any housing court work until 2011?
Very little. Mr. Weitzel was correct that at Adler, Pollock and Sheehan, we did little, if any, housing work. And so in 2011, yes, I started doing housing work.
And you, at that time in 2011, you were doing insurance defense and housing? Is that
Yes, sir.
So how much of your time was devoted to housing work in 2011?
Probably 50%.
50?
Yes, sir.
How many times would you say you represented people on the plaintiff side in housing court?
100% of the time.
100%?
Yes.
How many cases did you do in housing court?
Just at Mackenzie and Salin or in my entire practice?
Well, since 2011, as a lawyer, how many appearances did you make? How many people did you represent?
I've had probably thousands.
Thousands?
Yeah. So at Mackenzie and Salin is about 50% of the practice. When I went to Turk and Keanu in 2014, they dealt exclusively with landlord-tenant law. And by that point, I was in court multiple days per week on multiple matters.
Always representing the landlord?
Always representing the landlord.
How many cases did you try during that time?
Again, hundreds.
You tried hundreds of cases?
Yes, sir. Summary process cases? Yes, sir.
And how long do those trials usually last on average?
An hour or less.
Hour or less? Except for this one that lasted 5 years.
There was well, sir, you were asking about the trials themselves.
Yeah.
The one that lasted 5 years was 5 years of civil litigation
Right, no, I understand. It was a 5-day trial, right?
and a 5-day jury trial, which we,
How many jury trials have you done in housing court?
let's see, done as first chair?
I'm sorry?
As first chair?
Yes. Yeah.
So in housing court, as first chair, that is the only one that went to trial, prepared for other ones. I did a jury trial as first chair in district court, and I was second chair in a different district court jury trial. All three of those were summary process trials.
Okay, so from 2011, you were with the firm, and then when did you leave that one?
2011, so the case that I was second chair on is Clearview versus Sheehan. That's approximately 2012 or 2013. That was in Rentham District Court. I was second chair on that one. After joining Turk and Keanu in 2014, I was first chair on a jury trial in Chelsea District Court. Then after that, the next jury trial I did that went to trial was the one that we were speaking about before. In between that time, I did hundreds of bench trials.
So from 11 to 14, you did about 50% housing court, correct?
Yes, sir.
And from 14 to 19, those 5 years, you did 100% housing court?
No, I'm sorry, not 100% housing court, 100% landlord-tenant work. We represented clients in housing court, superior court, district court, and federal court. I have appeared.
Commercial and residential?
Yes,
So altogether, you spent about 8 years as a lawyer doing housing court stuff, is that correct?
from 2011 to 2019, yes, sir.
And then you became a housing specialist,
Yes, sir.
stopped being a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
What made you do that?
So, the life of an associate or of a litigator is driven by billable hours. And at that point in time, I had 2 young children, a very long commute from Danvers down to Braintree. And it was a better decision for work-life balance. It changed my life. I was able to take the things I had learned and approach the same litigants, but this time without an agenda. And I think it helped me be an effective housing specialist.
So housing specialist would be like a mediator, you did that for a year, is that correct?
9 months, sir.
9 months?
Yes, sir.
And you became an assistant clerk,
Yes, sir.
and you became first assistant clerk. But fair to say that at the end of the day, you have 8 years' experience in the housing court as a lawyer, and 3 years as a housing court specialist and an assistant clerk.
Yes, sir, that's fair.
Have you applied any other times? I didn't look at your application for
I
that.
applied in 2019,
2019?
and this application is from 2020.
This is so you're here from your application in 19? Or you applied again?
I applied again. So in 2019, I was a housing specialist. The 2020 application, which is the one before you, I was an assistant clerk.
Do you think having 8 years' experience as a lawyer in the housing court is enough to become a judge?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Council Jubaville?
So when you applied for a judgeship the first time in 2019, you would have had 5 years' experience, right?
Let's see, in 2019, I would have had the 8 years of experience as a practicing lawyer and the 1 year as a housing specialist.
So 1 year as a housing specialist, felt you were qualified to be a judge in a housing court?
Yes, sir.
I've gotten calls on you, both good and bad. Bad ones were that the tactics judge in the case that Councilor Kennedy brought up, lawyer said to me, we're with you. It was tough to get discovery, you had to work for it. And a couple of lawyers said to me that in their opinion, you displayed a pretty good sense of arrogance. Are you arrogant?
I'm not arrogant.
So you represented only landlords. So how do we know that you're going to be fair to tenants when you've made your living representing landlords against tenants?
I think the best indicator that you can take to that is my reputation as a housing specialist, as an assistant clerk, as I was.
You've only been there 3 years.
Yes, sir, but it has given me the opportunity to continue to partake in the same realm where I was before, but removing the agenda that is presented by the client that was presented.
But after serving 1 year as a housing specialist, you decided you were qualified to be a judge. To me, that's a little sense of arrogance. I can't imagine anybody being in the court system 1 year and saying, I'm qualified to be a judge. The case that Counsel Kennedy brought up, and I agree with him, the wording by the judge, obstructionist tactics, that basically caused this bill to be decided by the judge, this tremendous amount of money. You say that you disagree with the judge.
Yes, sir.
You think this judge just said that for no reason?
Sir, I'm sure she took a great thought in her decision. I just disagree with it.
Well, I'm sure you would. I'm sure your who paid the legal fees? The client?
Yes, sir.
So on a $2,000 case, your client ended up paying $222,000?
I don't know what the math is, but it was a large amount, sir.
And in addition to that, she paid you, the client.
That's correct, sir.
How much did the firm charge her?
I do not know, sir.
Give me a ballpark.
A lot of money, sir.
Over $100,000?
No, sir. I can't speak.
Well, this decision, have you read the decision?
Sir.
You were there defending, you're there against this decision, right?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Well, who was the lawyer that handled the case in court when you were gone?
A different attorney after I had left the firm. I'm not sure who handled it.
So did the client ever make an objection to how they were treated and how much money they had to pay?
Not to me.
Well, I don't care if it's to you or not. You would have heard it if they made a complaint in the firm, wouldn't you?
Sir, taking an attorney from that firm to reach out and tell me, and that didn't happen.
Weren't you interested in this case after you left to see what the results were?
That's why I read the decision, but I didn't.
And after you read the decision, did you call anybody at your firm or talk about it?
I don't think I did, sir. No,
Did you ever call the client and say, geez, I'm sorry things went that way?
I did not, sir. No.
I gotta tell you, I've been practicing for 43 years. I don't do housing court work. That's the most amazing case I've ever heard of. If I was the lawyer, I would have sued you for malpractice. Did they sue you for malpractice?
No, sir.
They go to the BBO against you?
No, sir.
Against your firm?
No, sir.
So they just coughed up the 222,000 or whatever it was, plus probably another 100,000 to your firm and said, that's okay, that's the way it is.
Like I said, sir, I wasn't involved at that point, so I don't know what happened.
Never discussed this decision with anybody at your firm?
Correct.
The firm never called you and said, Jesus, we really got whacked here on legal fees.
No, sir, they did not.
They didn't do that? So after you, when did you leave, by the way?
2019, sir.
Okay. And this decision was, when was this decision? 2018. So you were still in the firm?
No, I don't believe the decision came out in 2018.
Well, let me see what the decision was.
It was March or April of 2019.
Did you leave it?
And I left specifically March 15th, 2019.
This is dated April 11th. 20 days after you left.
Yes, sir.
You didn't talk about this with anybody in your firm?
I did not, sir.
You weren't interested in finding out how the client felt about all this? You carried this case since when, 2013?
I was not the only attorney working on that case.
I didn't ask you that. I said, you carried this case from about 2013, right?
No, sir. I joined that particular firm in 20,
Okay.
I was not the attorney that started that case. At some point, I don't remember exactly when, after being a member of the firm that represented the landlord in that case, I carried the case, to use your word.
Okay, so from 2014, when you got the case, until the decision.
Yes, sir. No,
20 days after you left, the decision came out. You were in court fighting this, weren't you?
yeah,
You
but
were
I was in,
the attorney in court when arguing this summary judgment, right?
summary judgment, it was a trial,
Okay.
and
Legal fees.
no, I was not. So that is to say, there was a
So
trial.
when she says obstructionist tactics by the lawyer, that wasn't you.
No, that's not what I'm saying, sir. So what she was referring to.
She is referring to you.
I don't know that she's referring to me specifically, sir. I don't know that it's me or the firm. But if it's
You
me,
were the guy handling it, weren't you?
for the sake of argument, let's say she was talking about me. I don't think she got it
For the
right.
sake of argument, I want to know, you were the one handling this case for the most part, weren't you?
Well, for example, I was not the,
Sir, were you the one handling this case primarily during the years of the litigation?
under the direction of the managing partner. So, I'll say yes, sir, I was.
Well, don't say yes. I mean, what do you do? She's talking about you, the judge. You're the one that went to court and argued against these fees, weren't you?
I believe I was still there.
Did you file a brief about the legal fees?
I believe I did, yes, sir.
So you were the one involved in the determination of these fees that she was going to allow.
Yes, sir, I think I was. Yeah.
What do you mean you think? Of course you were.
Yes, I was, sir.
And 20 days after you leave, the decision came out. You didn't care about it, you didn't talk about it, you didn't know anything about it, nothing.
I don't have a memory of contacting my former colleagues about it, sir. I was pretty confident that they were going to file an appeal, which I know that they did.
What does that have to do with it?
Many times, decisions come out that you disagree with and they get appealed.
Look, if I'm involved in a case and I leave the firm or the case leaves me at the end, any lawyer I know would be interested to see what the decision came down in this case. Having put so much time and effort into it, I'd want to know what the judge ruled on, wouldn't you?
Yes, and I did, and that's why I read the
decision. You never contacted the client and said, geez, I'm sorry, not like that. I'm sorry you got hit with $220,000 because judge's decision.
I did not do that.
Usually at the firm ever do that?
I wouldn't know, sir.
See, that's troubling to me and again, I'm only getting hearsay from people over the years and out in court, but usually people that represent landlords only are not good with tenants. They don't have the feeling for tenants, and that's troubling to me. I don't do that kind of work, as I said, but to me, tenants usually end up with the short end of the stick in these matters. They're the ones that have to move. They're the ones that get moved from housing. And I don't know whether you're going to have a feeling for those tenants. What do you say?
I believe I will. I believe I have. I believe.
When you say I believe, That's a lot different than saying, I will. Because it sounds to me you're really not sure whether you would have.
I will be fair and unbiased towards tenants, as I will to landlords.
Tell me what the standard is for you to recuse yourself on a case.
If I've had some personal involvement with either the attorney or it's a former client, I should identify that potential conflict. And there is an analysis of looking within oneself to see if you would have some bias, and then putting it to the parties as to whether or not they would request you to recuse yourself.
Yeah, the only difference, the only problem with that is when the judge does that in court, most attorneys don't say, yes, judge, I'd like you to recuse yourself, because they're afraid of some backlash in some way. But if my memory serves me correct, the standard for recusal is not what you think. It's the appearance of some conflict. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. If the public has a thought that there's an appearance, isn't that the standard on recusal?
I understood it the way I described it. It's a bit of subjective, the way you're phrasing it, because an appearance is subjective in and of itself. That is to say, to who is it appearing that way?
Doesn't matter.
Counsel, you have about a minute left.
I'm done?
Are you done?
No, am
You have
I?
about a minute.
Okay, thanks. Well, we'll leave it with that. I think we'll leave it like that. Thank you for answering.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Counsel Devaney?
Thank you for all the time that you afforded me, that you met with me. First of all, on the positive, I think that it's quite an accomplishment as an immigrant to this country that you are a judicial nominee. As a first generation American, I know that, that's quite a thing. And when we met, and we talked, I could identify with my family. Just like you, my mom went to school and only knew Italian. So that aside, I think that's quite, quite an achievement. But I want to say that where I'm called last, I had a lot of questions I was going to ask you, and my colleagues have gone through that very thoroughly. And Counsel Ferrara, his line of questioning was what I was going to ask. So it really leaves me with little to not be redundant, and I don't want to be redundant. So I'm going to ask you, 15 years, break that up. Tell me 15 years you put in your resume that you have been a lawyer. And I want to know the positions you've had in the courthouse and as a lawyer, and break it up into 15 years and when you applied and what experience you had then. So if you can, I hope I'm not being redundant, and I hope that you'll answer that.
No, thank you for your question. It allows me the opportunity to talk about my first experience as a lawyer, which I haven't done yet. So I started out at a small firm in Salem, Massachusetts. It was a general practice firm. There we did a lot of real estate law, civil litigation, and the firm also did probate work, but I did not. Mostly my practice there was conveyancing, so there was a lot of real estate closings, and then some litigation. From there, I went on to work at Adler, Pollock and Sheehan, where it was exclusively civil litigation. And that experience honed my skills in superior court practice and federal court practice, which later, I think served me well when I moved to the housing court, forum. A lot of brief writing, a lot of oral arguments on my feet for motions, that sort of thing, depositions. Again, listening carefully to what the witness was telling you at the deposition and asking the follow-up questions. From, from then on, I went to Mackenzie and Sowen, and I continued to work um, on those skills while also learning about the housing court, because that's where I started to practice. And then finally, before joining the housing court, I spent 5 years practicing at Turk&Kiano before joining the court where I spent the most of my time. As a housing specialist, I was a neutral party working with both sides. And then I became an assistant clerk, all of which gives me an intimate knowledge of the housing court and how it works and its protocols and what to look for in a particular case, which I think will serve me well as a judge if I'm lucky enough to be nominated.
The council has adopted a rule 15 minutes, so I feel like a Federal Express man, so I have to really cut through the chase. I want to tell you that the housing court is very important to me, and I have been I've been involved in closely with a citizen housing group, and we had someone come in a couple of years ago for this position to be a judge in the housing court, and they opposed it because of egregious things that he had done to people coming, defendants. Now, in addition to that, I've been here almost 23 years. 8 people talked in opposition. That is unheard of. But the council voted for him nevertheless. And so I'm really concerned about having someone with compassion and can understand both sides. I asked Justice Bud to have a task force. And it would be some of these people who have been watching housing courts all these years, because there's different rules in the housing court that don't apply in the Superior Court and that have been really detrimental to people. And so I saw that with the person that they voted for, and he'd gone to Superior Court, and it was wrong because the Superior Court judge did not know the ruling. And that nominee even asked the defendant to pay for his legal fees. That he quoted Mass General Law, it was illegal. And one of the councils, when they voted, oh, everybody makes a mistake. No. But I am concerned, and we don't have a task force. And I think these other judges should be educated, because the housing court is unique and what they have to live up to in the Mass General laws. So having said that, I am concerned about your experience. So when you first applied, did you believe that you were qualified to be a judge? And the other thing is, and I can't dismiss it, I'm concerned about that you've represented mostly homeowners and business people rather than tenants. So all of that, I have to really look through all of that. And I would have asked the questions that my colleagues did, but I don't want to, I only got a few minutes, so I can't go through that, okay? So tell me, you know, when you look at the judges on the housing court, you know, what do you feel of those people? What is the greatest the greatest contribution that they're bringing to the housing court? And what is the contribution of the housing court to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Okay, what do they provide? So given that, and I know this is the biggest problem, people can't afford to buy houses, and young people can't even afford the rent. And so I know, so housing is a priority with me. And so can you talk about that?
Certainly. The housing court is unique in its ability to incorporate all the parts that work within it to resolve cases. Thousands of cases get filed in housing court, and only a small fraction of that actually make it to to trial. The reason for that is the involvement of important pieces like the housing act, which is unique to the housing court. I know that in pre-pandemic times, that department resolved close to 90% of the cases. That leaves a much smaller chunk for the judges to have to work through. You asked me the judges of the housing court bring to the Commonwealth. I'm lucky enough to consider some of them my good friends, and they are intelligent, hardworking, and good listeners, which I think is imperative judge to be.
Okay, I want to go back to the one judge that I voted against, okay? There were 8 people that came in opposition, and it was civil, and they even had a housing group of citizens that came in. And one of those that testified, I could cry, and I will never forget it. He happened to be a black man, very quiet, very civil, didn't attack, and he talked about that he in time to the bank and everything. I put myself in his place. That could have been me. So when he tried to rectify it, it was closed. He was closed down. Excuse me. Let's be polite. Okay, so so what happened was when he tried to pay the bank, it was closed down. He couldn't do it. He talked about he has an adopted 12-year-old boy, and the boy cries because he doesn't know where he's going to live or where he's going to go to school. My hat went out to him. Now, I want to tell you about that judge that the council voted for, not me. 3 days later, that man who talked about his adopted son was evicted out of his house. That's what I see. And we've got that judge serving there. So I don't mind being the tuxedo with brown shoes. Here I am. And if I want to vote, I'll stick with that when I have investigated and I know it's the right thing. And one thing I learned serving here, not all to do the right thing. And it's very difficult because having that experience, I'm looking at you with not that much experience, and you're saying you have respect for all these judges. We have a wonderful judge here that I respect, okay? But that's not all true. And he's still doing damage. All I'm saying is that I really have to really look into this. I value you as what you've done. You've come to this country and come to this, and I know the prejudice that might be. I'm like, oh, my father had to change his name because they wouldn't hire Italians. I could tell you a lot of prejudice. I'm so thankful that we have people like you that can speak Spanish. That's such a value in the housing court for people coming through. But there's so much more I have to weigh of your experience, of your length of time. And I'm just saying, I know there's people out there that are qualified that are not even getting an interview, or if they get an interview, they're rejected. So I have to weigh all that. And there's a lot of information here that we've got. And I really feel bad for those tenants and the landlords. And one of the cases you had that, the locks, you're writing, the locks were, her house was locked, she had valuable property in the end, all of that. It's a lot of things that I have to weigh. And so I really, all my colleagues have done a job that I would have, weighed in on, and it's already said. And so I'm saying that I have a lot to think about. And with that past practice of that judge that's sitting there, that's still doesn't change, he still has to have compassion, and he's done some egregious things. And I will never forget that man that came. And that judge, 3 days after his hearing, evicted that his son. Forget that.
It's not true.
And so I have a lot to think about. And I have 22 years of experience of looking into housing court, and I'm determined that we need a task force committee to really educate JC and others. It's too important. And I know the most serious problem today is housing, everything. So I'm going look into all of this, but I think it's been said here. You know what the sad thing is? That judge that went through, the people coming opposing him, and they were all civil. There was never this discussion, never. I would have welcomed it. This was wonderful today. I wish it was like this all the time. There wasn't the questioning of this man and the damage that he's done, the egregious things of elderly people who were widowed and what he did to them. And one of them couldn't even come, that she was, what he had done with, to her immensely, she couldn't come and testify. But 8 people came and testified. I've been here almost 23 years, that's unheard of. And everyone was civil, and everyone had a reason why this person shouldn't have been sitting on the bench, but he is. So I have a lot to think about, and I thank you for applying. I think, you know, I really think it's wonderful to have someone with, you know, a language background and everything, but I promise you, I won't leave this stone unturned. I haven't up to this point, and I've got more to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finished? Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask my questions, but you guys,
One thing out first.
yeah, go ahead.
Council Juvenile was asking some questions. I Googled the appeal. Came down in January 13th of 2021. The judge's findings were upheld, and attorney's fees were awarded against your client for the appeal.
How much? How much? How much?
Does it say? It says submit affidavits.
Okay, did anyone else want to say anything before I get to go?
I just wanted to say that that other gentleman was someone who was targeted by the association that is representing mortgagees who are in foreclosure. The problem that I think you have and I have is that some people use the equity in their house thinking it's like an ATM, but at some point you got to pay it back. And these people did not pay it back. And there's also situations where you have a client who says, I don't care what it costs. I want to fight this, and you have an obligation as a lawyer to fight it. Even though you tell the client, look, this is a case involving $2,000. This is ridiculous. Let's just settle it. Give him what he wants, get him out. That's the end of it. And sometimes you have a client you just cannot control. So the law is not as simple as you might think. It has complexities that sometimes have significant ramifications. And I can say that I've told clients, look, you can either pay me thousands and thousands of dollars, or we can resolve this case as it should be. And most of the time people listen, but once in a while, especially in light of the internet, a lot of people out there, they look, they see, they focus on one aspect of something, and they think that I know what's best, not my lawyer. So sometimes people make significant mistakes. But in the meantime, in terms of his work as an attorney for 8 years, and the fact that this was basically, I think you said you had 2 other trials that lasted no time at all. The fact that you had thousands of other cases that went perfectly as usual in the norm. And that you have risen from the housing court specialist to assistant clerk. And your reputation amongst the people in housing court is that you do a damn good job. So I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to use my time. I want to clarify something Councilor Devaney said. the fellow who she was referring to, the folks objected because they didn't like that he had represented somebody that they were opposed to. Yes, Marilyn, I'm sorry. Marilyn, excuse me, this is my time.
Debate each other, please be respectful.
Okay,
That's
so,
fact. Okay, what I said is fact.
excuse me, you're out of order. This fellow represented a client that they didn't like, and that's why he opposed him. Also, that African-American man who took out a mortgage, and he literally said here, he's a senior citizen and he shouldn't have to pay it back, which I understand he really did get taken in his, but that judge did not evict him. That judge had absolutely nothing to do with his eviction. So I do want that on the record. To go to your application, Attorney Gonzalez, I am literally the only person here who goes to housing court and knows housing court. You have been practicing in this type of law, not for 8 years, but for 11 years, since 2011. That's when you started and you were in some of this eviction work. There is, as somebody who has actually been with housing specialists, there is no better training. Literally, there is no better training than being a housing specialist or an assistant clerk or a clerk in the housing court to be a judge in the housing court. I can say that with every fiber of my being. I'm wearing a fair housing pin. This is my profession, housing. This is what I do. I get people into housing. I represent people that are trying to not just buy houses, but to rent houses. And I watch the obstacles that they face every single day. And I see how some of the laws are turned around and everything. There's a very big difference between an eviction of a landlord tenant and somebody who doesn't pay their mortgage and why they don't pay their mortgage. Now, the fact of the matter is, and I'm going on a little diatribe right now, the fact of the matter is, since the laws have been changed under the leadership of Senator Warren, there are very few fraudulent mortgages in this country anymore. There are a few, not too many, and certainly not by small local banks and certainly not by credit unions. You may see some of the larger banks. If people don't tell the truth on their applications and they get money they can't pay back because they need money, and people borrow against their houses all the time for different reasons, some for political campaigns. I've known political candidates who borrowed against their houses for their political campaigns. Imagine. That's, to me, their choice. But I can honestly say, as the only person on this council who works in this profession, you are more qualified than almost anyone I've ever seen come here for the housing court. It's unfortunate that judge wrote that and she had her reasons for whatever she did. You were in the middle of that case. You weren't at the beginning and you weren't at the end. You were in the middle of it. There's literally no reason why you should have called that firm to ask them about it or to ask the client. You weren't there anymore. You were in a completely different thing. In fact, it might have even been unethical if you'd done that. So I don't have a problem with that, but I feel like I need to be very clear on what your experience is. You also mentioned something that most people and some counselors don't understand who aren't lawyers. There is a difference between litigation and trial. You're litigating every day as a housing specialist. That's what it is. It's litigation, right? Sure. You're sitting there in a room, you might have 10 cases in a day. You may have litigated 10 cases in one day. Literally, as you said, thousands and thousands and thousands of cases. And I know that because I know your work. Now, as a housing specialist and as an assistant clerk, you're not representing the landlord. You're there as a neutral party. So I don't understand why your previous experience is being held against you. It's prejudicial in my opinion. I would just like to say, I think you're infinitely qualified, and frankly, your resume, and I think the fact that Judge Dalton, who rarely comes here, I think you've come one other time since you were confirmed, and I follow your work because this is literally the court that I go into. in my profession, you're eminently qualified. You're more qualified than almost anybody else I've ever seen come here. In being bilingual is just a bonus. So with that said, I strongly support your nomination to the bench. That's it. Anyway, with that, this hearing is closed.
Oh, you're the mayor, right?
I am Mary Hurley, Governor's Counselor from Region 8. I'm pleased to, first of all, introduce Tara Jacobs to the other members of the Governor's Council, who was elected to take my place on the council. And she is from North Adams, which is about as far away, yeah, from Boston. So she's going to have like a 4-hour commute one
We're
way.
looking forward to the invite for the barbecue.
The barbecue, yeah. Okay, sounds good. I'd also like to introduce my fellow counselors, Attorney Joseph Ferrara, Robert Jubenville, Marilyn Petito Devaney, the Dean of the Council, Christopher Ianella. Eileen Duff is here, but she has not come back from her recess. Terry Kennedy and Paul DiPaolo. We are here this morning relative to the nomination of Stephen Rose for reappointment to the Industrial Accident Board as an administrative judge to a 6-year term that will expire on May 28th, 2028. The governor submitted this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 23E, Section 4. And I would indicate that Mr. Rose has not brought any witnesses at my instruction. I would also like to recognize the Chief Justice. Omar has been here for how many years?
A lot, since 2000.
And does a great job. I'd also like to point out that it was through the efforts of Counselor Ianella that all of these reappointments were made before the close of Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito's administration ends its term. We also have present now Counselor Eileen Duff. So without further ado, would you like to make a statement, Judge Rose, to the board?
Sure. I began handling workers' compensation claims, an insurance adjuster, in April of 1979. So I've been in this field for 43 years. This job that I've had for the last 18 years has been the apex of my professional career. It's been an honor and a privilege. I've done my level best to decide every case impartially, acknowledging that the statute is meant to and is designed to protect injured workers. That has to be in the back of your mind all the time. And I would like to continue in that job for the next 6 years.
Right. I would also indicate that although he has no witnesses here, his legal experience was with the firm of Pellegrini, Seeley, Ryan, and Blakesley, and could not have gotten a higher rating, both as to his demeanor, as to his knowledge of the law, as to his ability to resolve cases justly and with true speed. So we'll start with Counselor Ferrara. Any questions, Counselor?
Thank you. I really don't have any questions. You have a great reputation. Council Ionella is a big fan, as is Sean from Catches reached out to me as well. You have a great reputation. I'll be voting for you next week. Thank you.
Counselor Jubenville.
Where do you live?
In Belchertown.
It's pretty close to Holyoke.
Yes.
Counselor Ionella convinced me to vote for you. And Counselor Hurley is a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
So I'm going to vote for you.
Counselor.
Compassion.
Yes, sir.
Counselor Devaney.
Nice to see you again. 19 years ago, I was here when I voted. I was 19 when I first voted for you, and I've always been so proud. Never a complaint, never anything about you. But I think that it's important for people out there to know, and I do want to put it in the record. When you were in law school, you ranked 3rd out of 238. And the honors, American Justice Prudence Awards, Constitutional Law, Trusts and Estates, Criminal Procedure, Products Liability, Merit in House Scholarships. Goodrich Merit Prize received twice, first class rank. Invitation in Law Review, Full-Time Employment Prevental Participation, Honors First Year Legal Writing Course. So much that you have been involved in and contributed to. And there's so many people that respect you. And I thank you for continuing. I really am. And that the governor has reappointed you. We need someone with your experience. And I'm very proud of the Industrial Action Board and with Omar. And I have been the one who has presided over his hearings. So I couldn't be more excited, and I can't stop smiling when I saw your name come up and to have the opportunity to meet up again with you. So I have one question. In almost 19 years, I almost know the answer. What is the changes that you have seen in the Industrial Accident Board? I know the pandemic has been a big influence, but what can you tell us about that? I mean, is there changes in laws or any of that that's come through?
How far back do you want me to go? Well, when I first started at Northfield as an adjuster, it took 8 months to get a conference. So some of the clients that we worked for as an insurance adjuster would have this starve them back to work strategy, I guess. And they would deny claims just flat out. And then the 85 amendments came along to deal with that, to try to bring down the time period. And that was successful, and almost too successful, because then the business community came in and complained, and then the 91 amendment, which reduced the benefits for injured workers. And going into the 2000s, we had a couple recessions in there, and that's probably the thing that I would worry about for the next few years. Because typically, if we go into a recession, and people get laid off, and they've been working through, and in other words, injured workers, sometimes they don't want to collect the wages, and they'll be hurt. And if there's a deep recession in Massachusetts, we would expect that the claims would be coming up. I think that's what we've seen in the past. So we may see, an increase in claims. The big change, there's been a bunch of changes, but one of the things that we've had to deal with in the last few years is the opioid crisis. And my boss, senior judge, has signed me to be one of the opioid mediators in this program that he developed. And it's been pretty successful, but it takes a long time, because for many, many years, the injured worker has been up against the insurance company. And all of a sudden now, post lump sum, we're talking about trying to convince the injured worker that what we're doing is really in his or her behalf. And it's tough, because not only are they physically, through no fault of their own, addicted to opioids, but also because they've worked against the insurance company for so long and have a hard time convincing that this whole process is really to their benefit. So, I mean, that's still an ongoing problem, and we've had a few successes, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And you know, a fly in the ointment was the Wright case, which was my case, which if the board is aware, certainly you're aware of it. It's a case where medical marijuana came up, and we found that medical marijuana is a good substitute for opioids and would actually help. But unfortunately, the federal government has really dragged their feet and done nothing. So, you know, the SJC came down and said, listen, we just can't order medical marijuana in workers' comp cases until the federal government does something about it. And, you know, I'm sorry, I'm going on and on. All right, so, you know, those are basically the big changes.
Like, yeah, you have seen them all, and tell me, is there an increase in injured workers cases, or has that stayed level through the years?
Well, the last few years, I think it's leveled off.
Really?
It
It just seems like that in the media, we see so many of these accidents that, you know, that people are injured, and I was just wondering how it related to your board.
I think it's leveled off. It has, yeah.
Well, thank you for applying again, and I thank the governor. I am so pleased to see you. I haven't stopped smiling since I saw your name reappointed. 19 years, and you look great. And I wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilor Iannella.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I have really many questions. I mean, we talked earlier. You know, I haven't appeared in front of the board in and I told you this. People, lawyers always been talking to me. Centrally located Boston and you're in Springfield. My calendar.
Yeah. But TV interview.
Yeah. It's, Mike Calvin always had a cell phone on, 100% of the time. He was a former government counselor. He passed away years ago, and Councilor Kennedy took his job. But I think the board today, I think it's the best board we've had in years, and I told that to the senior judge. From what I hear, you're doing a good job. Just a little bit too conservative. You know, very quiet on that. Charles' thing is, you may think you're not conservative. And to the lawyers out there who feel calm, and obviously I don't have 1,000 people calling. You know, whether it's a PTA, you got my time. Whether you take it for, whatever you take it for, but I think you're perceived a little bit more conservative than most of the other judges. You may not think that, but I'm just bringing it to your attention. Take it whatever it's worth. But having said that, you're very respectful to the people who come before you, the attorneys on both sides. There's no question about that, because those are questions I always ask. Timely decisions, all that, not an issue. So yeah, I mean, when you vote, your name comes before the council, I'm more than happy to vote for you. And I can tell you, Oma was real. I said this a week ago or 2 weeks ago, instrumental in getting all of you people. Because Omar talked to the administration, I talked to the administration. We're coming down to the mandate of the game. We wanted to get all you folks reappointed as long as you were justified. But yeah, I have no further questions. Best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Iannella. Councilor Duff.
Thank you. I won't call you Omar, I'll call you Judge.
Whatever, it's fine. I mean.
A stickler for things
I
like
go with
that.
your majesty.
Yeah, go with your majesty. I hate when people who don't know me call me by my first name. Anyway, you're eminently qualified, and I'm pleased that you want to keep doing this. So thank you very much. No questions.
Thank you. Counselor Kennedy?
But one thing I absolutely agree with is that you guys wouldn't be here today but for the efforts of Judge Hernandez and Counsel Ianella for these reappointments. They would have, the ones that would have happened later would have sat there, I think, because as you can see, we're jam-packed at the end of the administration, and squeezing all you guys in was due to their efforts. And given how busy we are, that's a big deal. I just want to touch on what Councilor Ianella referred to when he said you were kind of conservative, because the one thing I heard about you was that you tend to be a little bit conservative, especially when it comes to, and I do no comp, no workers' comp, at all. If I went up there, they would have no idea who I am. But I hear that you're the toughest guy out there on permanent and total disability cases. What do you think of that?
I would respectfully disagree. I don't know where that perception comes from. I really.
Have you heard that before?
Never.
No?
In fact, I think I mentioned, I have some information that at one point I was called an uber liberal. Quote unquote, I swear to God. And,
Your reputation is as more conservative than most judges. Now, that might be unfair because you're kind of out there by yourself, where, there's a lot of people in Boston, a lot of people in Fall River and wherever else you guys go, Lawrence, I guess, right? But you're kind of out there by yourself in Springfield, right? How many judges out there?
well, we've got two.
So who's the other one?
Judge Daniels.
Huh?
Judge Daniels is out there, Thomas Daniels.
So maybe that's the only person you're being compared to. I don't know. But that is certainly, it is, I can tell you this, because I don't know anything about comp, so I talk to people that I do know that do comp. And that was the one comment that I heard more than once. So I'm gonna leave it at that just like Councilor Ianella said, give it some thought. I think you should. We had a great talk on the phone. Ianella said you gotta vote for this guy. Mary's a big supporter. I'm gonna vote for you. But, sometimes, we can say things to you that the people who appear in front of you can't. Right?
Yeah.
And take it for food for thought when you reflect on that and you maybe consider it when you're making your decision. So you might be a little too conservative.
I think I have an explanation. From Belchertown, and that's closer to Holyoke. Yeah, could be it.
Very conservative in Holyoke.
Actually, if the truth be told, sitting as a judge, I went and spent some time down in the Boston area, Dorchester. And after being in Western Massachusetts, I thought I was on another planet. They didn't do anything the same way that we did it our way. And some of the things that they did were just, I couldn't understand it. Then I sat at the Cape, and that was a whole nother world. So I think that, with all due respect to Holyoke, which I love for the parade, among other things, and I have dear friends who live there, I think that the geography has a lot to do with it as well. But you may take that to heart.
Tell us there's something wrong with Massachusetts with the water or something?
No, it's better. It's the best. Counselor DiPaolo.
Thank you. Thinking about the birthplace of volleyball? Is that true?
Yeah.
Children's Museum too. So with the reappointments, it's pretty easy work for me because I just need to talk to people who are practicing in the field, and I don't need to be duplicative of what's come before. I've heard the same things that Councilor Kennedy and Councilor Ianella talked about, but in addition, of course, I've heard your temperament is good, that you're doing an excellent job, and so I don't have any questions for you. Thank you.
And with that, I will close the hearing right after I say again, Pellegrini, Celia, Ryan, and Blakesley, all think that you do a great job. I didn't hear the word conservative at all, but there may be a little bias there. So we look forward to voting for you next week. Thank you. Start.
That's pretty serious. Pretty serious.
Always. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Hurley, the counselor from Region 8, and it's my pleasure to be here this morning for the hearing on the nomination of Nicola Gioscia, otherwise known as Nick Gioscia. The governor has sent the council a letter He says, "Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate the following person to the position of Associate Justice of the District Court Circuit. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The nominee is Nicola Gioscia of East Long Meadow, Massachusetts, to the position of Associate Justice of the District Court Circuit, which position was authorized by Chapter 206 of the Acts of 1988. And for those of you who are not familiar with appointment of a district court judge as a circuit judge, as opposed to a judge of a particular court, in 1988, they created district court judge positions that were on circuit. In other words, they can travel all over in a particular region. And so that is what was done for Attorney Gioscia. We have witnesses here this morning. Mr. Anthony Mogavera, Assistant Chief Probation Officer of Chicopee District Court, which was my home court. Barbara Burton, who is now the Clerk Magistrate of the Chicopee District Court. And Attorney Edward Cavari, District Court Chief Prosecutor, who has been doing a great job in that position as well. Would everybody who's going to testify here today please stand and raise your right hand? You solemnly swear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to the matter. Attorney Gioscia. As it relates to the matter now in hearing before this honorable body. Thank you. First, we're going to call on Anthony Mogavero, Assistant Chief Probation Officer, who started with me. What do they call them? Associate Probation Officers? Yes. And he's risen through the ranks to that of Assistant Chief Probation Officer. Mr. Mogavero. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. I'm honored to be here today to speak on behalf of Nick Gioscia. I've had the privilege of working with Attorney Gioscia for approximately 25 years. And when I started in the trial court, I was 23 years old and living away from home. I realized it at the time, but I needed people. When I look back over my career, one of my biggest mentors from the beginning until present day is sitting next to me right here. It's important to have someone that can mentor you and help guide you. And Nick Gioscia is one of those people. When you ask how does he do this, he embodies three very important traits. It's hard work ethic, integrity, and empathy. These traits, along with being a good listener, is what makes Nick Gioscia a stellar attorney and a great overall person that he is. I've had the opportunity to work with Nick on many occasions throughout the years, and I can tell you he always puts 100% into his clients. He has the ability to make decisions and recommendations that just make sense. He definitely brought me down to earth more than a few times. It's always a relief to see Attorney Gioscia walk through the door as our bar advocate, because you know that he'll be able to handle a large workload efficiently and effectively, even on the busiest of days. And how does he do this? It's been working in the trenches here as a defense attorney in the district court for over 25 years. He gives and earns respect from his colleagues and the clients that he serves. The attorney Nick Gioscia embodies all of what the district court is about. And that's all due to his hard work ethic, empathy, honor, and integrity. I know that Nick Gioscia has the temperament needed for the bench, and I can wholeheartedly tell you that if appointed, the employees of the trial court and the community as a whole will be better for it.
Thank you, Mr. Mogavera. Any questions, councilors? Councilor Ferrara.
Do you have any stories about Judge Hurley?
I actually, Judge Hurley and I go back. I was appointed or received the Associate Probation Officer job in 1998. And back in those days, I was petrified of any judge that took the bench. And extremely scared of Judge Hurley at first.
You still are.
Yeah, I still am. But we worked together for years, and I think we had a very good working relationship, but too many stories to tell.
All right, we'll talk later. Thank you.
Councilor Devaney.
I'd like to know, you don't always have probation officers coming. How important is it for a judge to have a relationship with a probation officer? And he already has, but as a judge, tell us how important that is.
Most important, Counselor Devaney, because
of the fact that we're in the courtroom every day and we're an impartial view of what's going on. So in our court specifically, we always, any case, any green sheet or tender of plea that goes before the court always gets passed through probation. And I think it's a good thing, and it's a good thing for the probation department to have a very good relationship with the judge, because we can make some level-headed, I believe we can make some level-headed recommendations to the judge.
Okay. Without names, is there, are there the majority of judges that work well with the probation officer? Or are there a few or one that doesn't, and you see that in your practice?
I have noticed it through the years. I think that we've been very lucky in Chicopee that the judges listen very closely to what probation has to say.
That's good to hear. Well, your testimony means a lot. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm sorry.
Just a comment. When I first started with you, you didn't have gray hair and you had a lot more of it. So don't be telling any tales out of school. Next, with pleasure, Clerk Magistrate Barbara Burton of the Chicopee District Court.
Morning, councilors. Madam Chairperson. It's an honor to be here today and a pleasure to be here in support of Attorney Gioscia's nomination to the bench. I had prepared some comments that I wanted to make that I would have begun with, but I think the most salient points that I can make are the points that are made through the voices of the employees who work in the Chicopee District Court and the clerk's office, my staff.
Just speak up a little louder.
Yes, I would like to begin by presenting some comments prepared by my staff. When I tell you that when I mentioned to my staff that Attorney Gioscia had been nominated for a judgeship, they were up, out of their chairs, positively ecstatic to hear the news. And several of them have written some comments that convey their impressions of Attorney Gioscia and let you know what they think of him from the perspective of having worked with him in Chicopee District Court for many years. The writers will remain nameless, but the first, I've known Nick for many years. He's a very respectful, honest, hardworking attorney. He's the kind of guy who would give you the shirt off of his back if you needed it. Another, Attorney Gioscia has always been a pleasure to work with. He's a professional and he's polite at all times. He comes into the clerk's office, helping anyone in the office, not only his clients, but he's been seen and observed and known to assist pro se litigants at the counter with matters that they need to bring before the court. I've seen him advocate for his clients on numerous occasions and he's always been fair. He shows a lot of respect for the court and is a very hard worker. Nick is one of the most considerate, she puts her name here, attorneys we have at Chicopee. He's one of the few attorneys who remembers my name and always makes sure to ask how I am doing. He knows to ask me about my dogs, which are very important to me. He actually cares to know about who I am as a person rather than just someone working in an office. He would help anyone under any circumstances. I've seen him help pro se litigants with filings. He would be a pleasure to have as a judge. He's an all-around fair guy and a good guy. So I first came to be familiar with Attorney Gioscia in Springfield in the course of my career in Springfield. I first came to know him when he was a young lawyer. I knew him from a distance. I don't know Attorney Gioscia personally. I don't know him outside of the courtrooms and the hallways of the courthouse, but he made very early impressions upon me. I remember back in the 90s when I first met him, his very calm, competent, pleasant demeanor. And I remember thinking of him as a quiet force in the courthouse. When I came to the Chicopee District Court a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to observe him in closer proximity and observe his professional demeanor. He is a person who really embraces and embodies the ideals of the legal profession and of the professional work that we do as lawyers. He is a helper. He is a caring person. He is supportive. He has become a friend to the court. He has on countless occasions volunteered his assistance to the court to represent people that we don't have lawyers for, because I'm not sure if you know, but the demand for lawyers tends to outpace the available lawyers in the courtroom. Attorney Gioscia always stands up. He's always willing, whether appointed or not, whether he's there to represent people on an appointed basis or not. He's a hardworking person. And it's just, if I had to summarize who he is for me, he's a gentleman's gentleman. He's always kind, he's always caring, he's always compassionate, and we would welcome him. We're very much hoping that you're going to be his nomination.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Ferrara?
Did you sometimes cover in Westfield District Court?
Occasionally.
A couple of years ago. Well, I have a good story, a good memory of it. I represented this poor guy who was trying to make an honest day's living, and he had a truck full of calipers and other motor vehicle parts. He got pulled over by the state police, who said he was overweight. Not only did they make him.
He was, or his truck was? He was, or his truck was?
His truck.
His truck overweight.
The state police made him empty his truck and towed his truck. That wasn't enough, so they gave him a ticket of $5,000 for the day. And I appealed it, and we appealed it, and I drove to Westfield, which took me like about 14 hours, I think. We waited several, like 2 or 3 hours to be called, but you were the clerk, and you were a breath of fresh air. And you were just amazing, despite the state police wanting to stick it to him still. You made the right decision. He paid a drastically reduced amount just to appease the state police a little bit. But you were compassionate, you were empathetic, and the guy had really paid the price already. With what happened. So thank you. So it means a lot that you came here today, knowing what compassion you have. Thank you.
Councilor Jubindell?
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see that this nominee comes into a court and asks how you're doing and asks for you. See, that's a trait. Councilor Kennedy and I probably get 80 years of criminal service under our belt. We were always taught, be nice to judges, they can hurt you, but be very nice to clerks because they can kill you. So I like that about him already. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilor Devaney?
Always a pleasure to see you, and your testimony is always wonderful, detailed. You're knowledgeable about this nominee, and I've said it before, and it's happened. We've had witnesses sitting in that chair, and I said, what knowledge do you have of this nominee? What have you seen him in court? Oh, once. That doesn't do, you brought your whole staff in, you know? So thank you for all your service. We really appreciate it. So I just, there's nothing more to add. I think what I've always said is I would never vote for anyone that didn't have compassion. And obviously, he does. So tell us about that aspect that you see in compassion.
So I mentioned that Attorney Gioscia is always willing to step up and assist people. I've never seen him turn down an opportunity when asked by the court. I've seen him go in and volunteer at times when, you know, everyone else kind of puts their head down. Are there any lawyers available? He's never that person to put his head down. He's just, as I said, you know, he's a gentleman among gentlemen. He's kind. He doesn't, you know, do a big dog and pony show. He doesn't slam on the table. His demeanor, you know, he's very understated. I think is a very nice demeanor.
Well, he doesn't need a mentor judge that we have, and I love the idea of that, the mentoring. Maybe they should get the older judges mentoring them, you know? But thank you so much. Your testimony was great. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Great to see you again, Madam.
See you, Barbara.
It's very good to see
I'm
everyone.
going to come out there someday, but not with my own speeding ticket.
Please step in and say hello. Thank you. You as well.
And last but certainly not least, District Attorney Edward Kavari, Chief Prosecutor in the District Courts of Camden County.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Ed Kavari. Judge Hurley, good to see you. Thank you for accepting this outstanding nominee that I've known for almost 25 years. I was in private practice for years before I came to the District Attorney's Office. So I've had two roles to cover with Mr. Gioscia, both as a colleague in the defense bar and a fairly close colleague during those years, and now as a district court supervisor throughout Hampton County, where I have seen him in action. I'm going to tell you 2 to 3 times a week for the last 12 years that I've been with the DA's office. So I have, and that's in 5 courts throughout the county. So with all due respect to Mr. Juvenville, Mr. Ferrara, and Mr. Kennedy, who I know have a few more years on me, all of us have been district court individuals for many years. Okay. And I have been up close and personal in having handled cases with Mr. Gioscia, having tried several cases against Mr. Gioscia as the prosecutor in the Palmer, Chicopee, Springfield, and Westfield district courts. And what I can tell you is not much more than what's been said already, but I will tell you anecdotal evidence, okay? And I had a conversation with a recently approved judge that came before you just in the last several months, Brandon Freeman, a newly district court judge in Region 6. Well, about 9 years ago, I tried to bring him in, as I'm a part-time recruiter for DA Galoni, and Judge Freeman didn't accept my bid to come on board with us. And about 3 years later, I went after Mr. Gioscia, and I said, and Judge Hurley, he'll appreciate this in my role, Nick, you can have my job when I'm leaving. You are perfect for this role, more so than I am. And of course, I was very firm with him in the hallway of the courthouse, and I felt a couple of days later that I had been too firm, and I went and apologized to him. But this is anecdotal evidence that I truly believed in him. I know my DA, Galoni, is very, very fond of him. And he is one of the most highly respected district court lawyers in all of Region 6. All the judges know, Nick. And I'd just like to tell you that I solicited comments, as Ms. Burton did, from the defense bar, from my prosecution team, and from the bench, and all will remain anonymous. But these were the comments that I received in the last couple of days. From the defense bar: tactful, knowledgeable, patient, courteous, calm, respectful, and stable. Imagine that. And
I can imagine.
fair, dependable, practical. And then from my office, from the DAs. Now, Nick's been around for 25 years. My guys are all in their 30s and into their maybe mid-30s. So when you got a guy like this coming in, they're obviously prepping hard to go against a guy like Mr. Gioscia. So I solicited comments, and this was no particular individuals, but those that know Gioscia, in and out of court every day. Trustworthy, professional, collegial, passionate, judicious, reasoned, honest, reasonable, and forthright. That's from the Commonwealth. Now, I know all these things personally about him, because when a guy reaches out to me, as you fellas that have done plenty of district court practice know, they know who to go to when the going gets tough. And I can remember, and I'll give you a particular circumstance, and I'll step aside, but several years ago, we had a lovely young lady in one of the district courts who was in a real jam. And those of you that know the statutes know that reckless endangerment of a child on top of an OUI or a neg-op, or actually was an overdose in the car, as I recall. And Nick came at me so directly for about 3, 4 to 6 months, giving me updates daily on her treatment, her recovery, and what happened to her. And ultimately, I made the decision to no pros the reckless charge, which of course carries it on and after and a mandatory sentence and license loss. So these are the kind of things that I witnessed in his passion and his empathy from the bench. And I'll finish with this: from the bench, reliable, patient, effective, intelligent, skilled, prepared, organized, respectful, easy to get along with, and professional, humble, hardworking, experienced, and finally, even-keeled, empathetic, and a balanced temperament. This is what the governor and this council is getting with Mr. Gioscia. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to testify before this council again, and certainly I'm honored to be in front of Judge Hurley, who I practiced law in front of on both sides of the aisle for many, many years, back to our Springfield District Court days. She left Chicopee. And I'm honored, and I appreciate all that you have done. And I will say this finally, that Region 6 is composed of the best judges in my 4 generations of judges that I've ever seen. So thank you very much. and thank the governor and the lieutenant governor.
Thank you. Any questions? You have a question? Yes.
That's a pretty big statement, being stable. Most of us defense lawyers aren't stable.
Well, you're an exception, I know that, Mr. Jubenville.
I want to just tell you that your testimony means a lot. Next time we, with Franco at the milk brief, he's going to pay the bill.
Yeah, well, let's expect it the next time, please. I'm a public servant on a income, and it's fixed very low.
Support you for a raise. So Kennedy, have any questions? All right, great to see you again.
Great to see Judge.
This will probably be the last time that
No,
in this chair,
I'm
so
a little bit weepy and grieving right now, Judge, and it's appreciative of all you've done for Region 6 and the communication and the input and the experience that you brought to this job. And I welcome our newest council member as well. And certainly, I'm available anytime you'd like to reach out for us. We're available for you. Thanks so much again, on.
thank you. All right. Attorney Gioscia, it's now your turn. This has to be the closest thing to your eulogy at your funeral. I never thought people would say such nice things about you, but it's all true. I can attest to
No,
it.
opposition hasn't gone yet, so we haven't heard both.
Excuse me, that's correct. Any opposition? Mother's shaking her head.
She always does that, Jay.
Now it's the time where I would like you to make your opening statement, but before you do that, I'd like you to introduce the people who are here with you today.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce my mother, Mary Ann Gioscia. Sitting to her right is my father, Nicola, Nick Gioscia. My wonderful sister, Angela Gioscia. My son, also Nick, Nicola is in the dean chair over there. He's in the governor's chair.
He's got the briefcase. Case.
I told him that,
He gets mad at that, don't tell him.
you think it'd be all right if I took a picture of him in that chair?
Absolutely.
And I told him to watch that briefcase. That's his job. Because this was in there, and it's very important. My lovely wife, Karen, next to my son, and my daughter, Marianne. We've already met my witnesses. I'd like to introduce myself, if I may. Nick Gioscia.
You may make your statement. And before you do
I'm
that,
sorry. I'm not used to it. My brother Vincent. You have no idea how I'm going to pay for that later. You have no idea. And I thought he was going to buy lunch, but that's not going to happen now.
just before you start, the lieutenant governor is going to come in for our assembly. You're all more than welcome to stay here for that. It's when we vote on the nominees that we've interviewed either last week or the week before that. So you go, make your opening statement. I know it's not going to be 10 minutes long, so go for it.
Can I sit?
Absolutely.
Yeah. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito, the Judicial Nominating Committee for their tireless commitment, Robert Ross, Lauren Green Petrino. I'd like to thank the Joint Bar, Emily Gothier, my family, my witnesses, Valerie McCarthy, and you, the esteemed Governor's Council, and especially my host counselor, Mary Hurley, for her commitment, dedication, and guidance. This morning, I was telling my wife that I'm really nervous, and I still am. I hope it doesn't show. But she gave me a kiss and said, just be you. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here today. The fact that I'm before you today is not a testament to me. It truly takes a village. I grew up in a multifamily home on Belmont Avenue in the city of Springfield, and I'm the youngest of three. My mother raised us while going to Springfield Technical Community College and then on to American International College, where she graduated and became a registered nurse and then received her master's degree. In her, I saw and learned dedication and perseverance. I remember when we were little, she would take us to class when she had no one to watch us. I saw her take care of us, cook dinner, maintain a home, be a fantastic mother, and then study late into the night. My father worked for the Department of Revenue. He would always make sure we had dinner together, especially on Sundays after church, which I pride myself on still doing today.
In him, I saw and learned service and commitment to others. He was and is the rock of our family. He was and is always there for us. While I was growing up, he was always active on the school committee or the license commission, and later in life, the zoning board of appeals. He had a strong commitment to his family, but also his community. I learned this from him as well. My sister, Angela, was a special education teacher for over 30 years. I'm sure she doesn't want me to say it, but she's 8 years older than me and has not only been the best sister anyone could have, she's like a second mother. Her tireless commitment to her family and her students was truly amazing. In her, I saw and learned compassion and empathy. My brother, who I forgot to introduce this morning, him and I were born 18 months apart. While he's my older brother, we were like twins growing up. In him, I saw and learned strength and tenacity to stand on what and who you believe in. We did everything together as children, from playing football in the backyard to going to school together. He's always been by my side and there for me, and I thank you for that. I met my wife on a blind date. I was 21 years old and she was 19. For me, it truly was love at first sight. For her, I'm sure it took some time. We dated for 8 years and she stuck with me all through school, and we've been married for 24. We've been together for 32 years. And over the years we've grown together, she makes me a better person. She's always been patient and understanding, and although I knew this, I learned it more from her. Whether I had to work late or watch booking videos when I came home, or got in and out of bed 5 times in the middle of the night because I was thinking about a case and needed to write a point down because I didn't want to forget, she never complained, not once. She also gave me the greatest gift of all, my children, my daughter Mariana, my son Nick. He's not a junior, but he's the third Nick. In them, I've instilled all the virtues that have made me the son, husband, father, and attorney that I am today. I believe in humility, empathy, and compassion. While growing up, I had all these things in my life, but many of my friends didn't. I'm fully aware that we live in a diverse world and that everyone comes from a stable, loving family. Fully aware that people come from diverse backgrounds and face challenges every day. I learned at a young age that everyone should be treated with respect and dignity. But you may not be aware of what village they grew up in or whether or not they even had a village. I like to say that my clients become my friends. I say this because they know I'm there for them. It's satisfying to know that if they have an issue, they call me first. I pride myself on being accessible and available. Although I have a private practice, I've dedicated most of my career to representing those with a voice. I've always considered it a privilege to represent indigent clients, those that need someone to fight for them, those that need someone to advocate for them, those that are suffering from addiction and mental health issues. I believe it's our responsibility to try and make this world a better place. The district court is a court of the people, by the people, and for the people. The district court is a court that serves its community. The district court is a court of second chances, a court that should serve to rehabilitate. It is because of these virtues, ideas, and beliefs that I sit before you today. I applied to become a judge so that I can use my years of experience to give back to the community in a positive way. Over the years, I've been in multiple courts and have built relationships with judges, clerks, assistant district attorneys, and probation officers. But most of all, I've built relationships with my clients. I've treated each and every one with the utmost respect and professionalism. I have practiced in the district court throughout my career and have extensive experience with the matters that are heard there. It's my desire to take all my legal and life experience and bring it to the bench so that I can continue to have a positive impact on the community and give back. It goes without saying that a judge should be impartial, but a judge should also be humble, patient, dedicated, empathetic, and compassionate. And I believe in empathy, the ability to understand the needs of others, and compassion to help someone anytime you have the opportunity. I believe in patience and not just hearing what others have to say, but actually listening. I believe in humility and being thankful for your station in life. I believe in being dedicated to what you do and how you do it. I live my personal and professional life with these beliefs. Based on these beliefs, my application, the due diligence report, and any letters that you may have received, as well as my witness testimony, thank you again. I humbly and respectfully suggest to you that I make an excellent associate justice of the district court. I ask that you confirm my nomination and allow me to serve the public as an associate justice of the district court. Thank you again, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Counselor Ferrara?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. You have an impeccable resume. The letters from the judges are unbelievable. Your counselor here to my left has been a wonderful advocate for you and for the region. She's quite stingy, as a matter of fact, pushing all these positions and all her people to get made. But we will miss her dearly. When she-
Jealous.
She's a big fan, and you have my support next week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Counselor Jubenville?
Thank you, Councilor Hurley. I'm wondering why that briefcase isn't chained to your son's wrist, because from what I hear, you charge a lot of money as a defense lawyer. Councilor Kennedy and I, we don't have a briefcase. We don't even have the money to put in a briefcase.
Deep pockets.
The only thing I want to say to you is, you've done jury waived cases,
I have, sir.
and you, like I, know that there are certain judges you never jury waive in front of. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it always amazes me that some judges that are sitting on our benches have never said the word not guilty. And I think, when we lawyers obviously talk when we're in a courtroom with each other about judges. And I often think what an awful legacy it is to go through your career as a judge. Nobody would jury waive in front of you. I don't think that's going to be the case with you.
I think so either, sir.
Because most jury waive trials, it's a weak case for the government, and jury waive it to rather than jury. I don't have anything else. I was touched by your witnesses and also the letters, Bobby Santinello and Brian Clune, who I think the world of, Johnny McKenna. Great letters. Joe Franco, who I've known for 35 years, done many cases with him, speak very, very highly of you.
Sure.
And your home counselor, Mary, also a fan of yours. I think you're going to make a great judge. I'm glad that being a defense attorney, you have my vote next week.
Thank you, sir.
Counselor Devaney?
Thank you for all the time you afforded me. And I think you tied Justice Island, and he came 2 hours and 20 minutes. So I really appreciate you coming the distance to meet with me. That was really great. It's important to me to meet the person, not just on the paper. And I feel like I know all your family, and it's important to know who you are and how you got here. And very interesting to me. And again, your parents, you come from a background of immigrants. And again, I think that's just wonderful that we have someone with that background. As I said, I'm a first generation American, so I'm proud of that. But I have to tell you, to have 4 judges and so many attorneys that wrote things about you, and I hope that your district district council presiding can mention some of these things. They have mentioned your dedication, your intelligence, fairness, compassion, that you have been experienced in both criminal and civil, and you bring common sense, practicality, and a very positive dynamic to the bench, and a deep understanding of the practice of law, both procedurally and substantially. I mean, what more can we ask, really, But in meeting with you, I saw that compassion that you have. That's very important to me. And you're concerned about the clients that you're leaving, and you have followed up to make sure that they're going to be properly, represented and everything. That means a lot to me. That shows compassion. Now, I want to ask you, you have had criminal, you've had civil, you've had a lot of different cases. And what I love about it, that you chose who you're going to represent, which probably had a law firm, right?
For a while, yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's important to me, because I think it's great, district attorney and attorney general, but they're given the case and the police have given a report, so they're halfway there. But you chose the clients and you follow up after that. That means a lot to me. Now, tell me, in your many years that you've been practicing, is there one defendant that you'll always remember that it really touched your heart? And is there one that you could pick out of all of them?
There absolutely is, Counselor, and thank you for the question. And the one that comes to mind first and foremost is the one that Attorney Kavari mentioned. And she was a young mother that was, for lack of a better term, she was in bad shape, and I worked with her a lot. I got her into some treatment and programs, and what makes me proud, what makes me really happy, is that to this day, she still reaches out.
Oh, not nice.
She's still, she's, and not often, like I may not hear from her for a year, but then I'll get a phone call. And she's like, hey, Nick, I just want to let you know I got another promotion at work, and my daughter and I've got my own place. And it just means a lot. It means a lot. And there's a few like that.
And then you stayed all those years with her. How long has it been?
It's probably been 5 years. 5 years.
You know, that's important to me, empathy and compassion. And in meeting with you, I saw that and I felt it, and how proud you are of the family.
I don't want to interrupt.
There's a lot going on here, so I'm going to have to stop. First of all, they're scheduling these hearings, which is wrong. This is supposed to be.
Excuse me, the Lieutenant Governor,
So continue out.
Geez.
Thank you very much.
Lieutenant Governor is here. You're welcome to stay. Like I said, we have some votes.
for all those who've died from gun violence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Stand against one nation.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay. I do want to acknowledge everyone here as members of the council and also Tara Jacobs, who is Governor's Council-elect here today. And I recognize Councilor Duff for the purpose of a motion of the tabulation and determination of the votes cast in the November 8th election for representatives in Congress, state officers, and ballot questions be accepted, and that an abstract of such tabulation and determination be forthwith transmitted to the state secretary as provided under the provisions of the Constitution and the general laws.
So moved, Governor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I recognize Councilor Iannella for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
Second.
The motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I recognize Councilor Tito Devaney for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace.
I couldn't be more pleased to be voting for.
Can we just do the motion
Justice of the peace.
to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries?
That's okay. I need a little more sleep. Okay.
Do we have?
I make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. I recognize Councilor Iannella for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Catherine T. Barkowski to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Somerville District Court.
Thank you. I make that motion for the appointment of Catherine Barkowski as court magistrate of the Somerville.
Second. There's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Sorry, who's this vote on? Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. Now I recognize Councilor Devaney for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of William F. Bloomer to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court.
I'm very honored to make the motion for the appointment of William Francis Bloomer.
Second.
This is his fifth time.
This is a motion and a second, yes.
Thank you, Counselor. This is his fifth time applying. In all my tenure, going on 23 years, never have we had someone who applied 5 years. He wants to be a judge. He has dedicated himself. He has been applying 5 years. People come through here politically in 2 weeks, but he has come to the top, gone to the governor, had the interview, thought he had it. It would expire and he'd apply again. This nominee has been serving 32 years as an attorney. He has had federal drug cases, he has murder cases, he has Massachusetts cases, racial, you name it, murders. He's had everything. He's had civil. There is no one that has come to me with a J&C application that is more qualified or more experienced than this man. And in addition, as a side, his wife is Spanish, so he has picked up some of that. And I think that culture bringing to the Superior Court is valuable. But he has seen all kinds of cases, and I'm not going to belabor it anymore, but I can't be more enthusiastic. And I thank him for applying 5 times. How many people would? I talk to people, and after they apply once, twice, that's it. But we would have lost him if he didn't keep applying. So I thank the governor for recognizing him after 5 times, and I'm very proud to make that nomination. And I got a second from Governor. I made you a governor, Joe.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Thank you, Counselor. And we may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. I recognize Councilor Jubenville for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Michael J. Callahan to the position of Associate Justice of the District Court.
I so move with pleasure.
Second.
Okay, Councilor Devani.
Discussion. This is Michael Callahan.
It is.
I regret I would be voting no. I have never had so much communication from people telling me how arrogant this man is. He yells, would he work with people? But besides that, I could go on and on about it. There are judges that are opposed to him and people in the court. But Lieutenant Governor, they're not going to come here and testify. They're just not going to do that. They can't. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, these are people that we respect that don't want him as a colleague. And they're saying how rude he is to people. Now, frosting on the cake. When he got nominated, he had a lot of clients. And guess what? He never told those defendants that he was nominated and that he couldn't continue their case. He dropped them all. And each one of those clients came to court and the judge said, Attorney Callahan's not here. That's compassion? That's empathy? Is that the kind of judge that we want? And I could go on with a lot of people that contacted me. But when you talk about judges, they're not going to come here to do that. You know they can't, they won't. But I respect all the people that I've talked to. And I have never in my tenure ever got reports like this. I didn't get one call telling me, vote for him, he's a great guy. He's hurt a lot of people. And these people never had a referral. He left them hanging. And they have to go out and find another attorney to follow up on their case. So I'm saying, I am pleading with this council. Do not vote for this person. I don't find joy in saying this and voting no, but people deserve to have someone that cares about them, that has compassion. And all those people he left and dropped them to go, he only cared about himself. I don't find joy in talking like this, but it's the truth. It's the facts. So I'm hoping that the council will reject this nominee.
There's a motion and a second, correct? Okay. Counselor?
I go to court every day. I've never heard one complaint against him by any judge or any lawyer. And, or any client that said that he didn't make arrangements to transfer their cases to other lawyers. Because the usual procedure is you do that with a motion to withdraw and you send a letter to the client that, or meet with the client and send a letter to follow it up that you won't be able to practice. I never heard one complaint against him in any court I ever went to.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Counselor Kennedy?
Yes.
Counselor DePaul?
No.
Counselor Rowley?
No.
Counselor Ferrara?
Yes.
Counselor Jubenville?
Yes.
Counselor Devani?
No.
Counselor
Yes.
No.
Okay, we'll take a brief recess, please.
To the business.
Still, it's 2 years. Fine. The register sheet.
Please, thank you. Okay, I recognize Councilor Ferreira for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Joseph B. McIntyre to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Housing Court, the Southeastern Division.
It is with extreme pleasure that I make that vote, geez, nomination. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Councilor.
I second my colleagues, Councilor Ferrara, very good appointment. Housing is so important, and we need someone with his caring and with his experience, so I second that too.
I just have to say, he's an extremely well-qualified person, well-known in Southeast Mass, has done a ton of public service as a state rep, and is just like, no one's ever said a bad word about Joe McIntyre, and everyone's very excited in Southeast Massachusetts to have him as clerk of the Housing Court, so thank you for that.
We have a motion in multiple seconds, and we may begin the roll call.
Yes.
Councilor Hurley?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Giordano?
Yes.
Councilor Devaney?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Duff?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I recognize Councilor Ferreira for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Pamela Gobbin Fernandez to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Rentham District Court.
So moved, Governor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Giordano?
Yes.
Councilor Devaney?
Yes, excellent.
Councilor Ino?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. I recognize Councilor Jubinville for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Lauren Green Petrigno to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Stoughton District Court.
I do so with pleasure.
Second.
Second.
Excellent.
Motion, second, excellent. We may begin the roll call.
Councilor Ferrara?
Yes.
Councilor Giordano?
Yes.
Councilor Devaney?
Yes.
Councilor Ino?
Yes.
Councilor Duff?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Great pleasure, yes.
Councilor Paula? Councilor Hurley?
Well deserved, yes.
Thank you. I recognize Councilor Kennedy for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of Joseph M. Spinelli to the position of Industrial Accident Board as Administrative Judge to a 6-year term, which will expire on January 4th, 2029.
So moved.
Second.
Judge.
There's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Councilor Giordano?
Yes.
Councilor Devaney?
Yes.
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 Thank you. I recognize Councilor Kennedy for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of A. Ninoska Rosado to the position of Administrative Judge to the Industrial Accident Board to a term of 6 years, which will expire on February 6, 2029.
They call it Nino, it's easier. So moved.
Second. The motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Councilor Devaney?
Yes, excellent, excellent choice.
Councilor Ino?
Yes.
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 Yay.
Thank you. I recognize Councilor Ferreira for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of Lauren Bergheimer to the position of Administrative Judge of the Industrial Accident Board for a 6-year term, which will expire on March 29, 2029.
So moved, Governor. She hails from the fine town of Swansea.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilor Paula? Councilor Hurley?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Giordano?
Yes.
Councilor Devaney?
Yes.
I recognize Councilor Ferreira for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of Marguerite O'Neill to the Industrial Accident Board as an Administrative Judge to a 6-year term, which will expire on March 29, 2020.
So moved, Governor.
Second.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Councilor Duff?
Yes.
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 Councilor Hurley?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Giordano?
Yes.
Councilor
Yes.
Devaney?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I recognize Counselor Hurley for a motion to record advice and consent to pardon Michael Biagini.
So moved.
We can begin the roll call.
Kennedy?
Yes.
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 I recognize Counselor DiPaolo for a motion to record advice and consent to pardon Robert Busa.
I make that motion.
Second.
We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 I recognize Counselor DiPaolo for a motion to record advice and consent to pardon Camille J. Chasson.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this motion is second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Thank you. I recognize Counselor DiPaolo for a motion to record advice and consent to pardon Brian Moran.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Thank you. That represents a lot of work, all of these nominations, and I appreciate on behalf of the governor and our team, your excellent work in vetting these nominations. We have new nominations. Michael Cahalan has been nominated to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court, and that's within your jurisdiction, Counsel Frere.
Thank you, Governor. I will speak with him and schedule that today.
Thank you. Jennifer Lennon has been nominated to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Marlborough District Court, and that's in your jurisdiction, Councilor DiPaolo.
We'll be having that hearing on December 21st at 2 p.m.
And Nicholas Bernier is nominated for appointment as a member of the Appellate Tax Board to a 6-year term, and that's also in your jurisdiction.
Thank you, Governor. I will speak with him and schedule that today as well.
Okay. That does conclude our business today.
I just want to say, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we have an excellent industrial accident board, and all of them that came up, I was so proud to vote for them. And we go back to someone we had today, Stephen Rose, 19 years. So we're very lucky that we've kept them on and the governor's reappointing them, and I wanted to register that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all again for your hard work.
You were questioning Counselor Devaney, you may proceed.
Thank you. I think I have to mention how you care about your clients. And in your JNC, you put that when you got nominated, the first thought you had was your clients. And you made sure to follow up and plan for referrals for them so that they wouldn't be left, without representation. We just voted for someone, didn't answer the calls of his clients after he got nominated, and just left them. So I just want to note that, because that's in your application, and that's what we want in a judge. We want people who care, not about themselves, to be arrogant. And from the time he was on the parole board, that person, forget him. But anyway, now, you talked about that defendant, which really touched my heart. Now, what do you see coming up that will be the biggest hurdle in the court that you're going to be facing?
Some hurdles that face the district court are mental health issues and pro se litigants. They need the attention, the time, and understanding, and I think that's an issue that the court faces.
So in all your cases, you talked about that defendant. Is there one that, that was so rewarding to you that you'll always remember that one? I'm sure you have so many.
There's quite a few. Yes, there's definitely other cases that I remember. I represented an elderly individual who was accused of some very not so nice things by a family member, and it was all lies, and it did come out. It was an extensive amount of work. But him I remember, and I will always remember, and I do hear from him every now and then, and one other member of his family every now and then.
Well, I have to tell you that I'm especially pleased that you were in a law firm. You worked all those years. How many years you had the law firm?
25 years I've been practicing.
And so you have represented all types of people, criminal and civil and everything. So in going to the district court, you've had so much experience going there. You've had so many cases. How many cases? You probably can't even count them.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't tell you, and I don't want
in trials. Well, what I'm thinking is that you've gone to the district court all these years. Is there anything that you think should be improved, some changes that should be made?
I think overall, I think the court runs as efficiently as it possibly can. I mean, the district court is a heavy volume court, and there's a lot of things that happen very quickly and very. I think the court does a great job. I know that the setup in Chicopee works well, and in Palmer District Court a lot, that works well. I know Springfield is a very busy court, but I think overall it runs very, very well.
Well, everything has come so fast here. I had 10 that I had a schedule to meet. I meet with everyone. I think I'm up to 1,000 now between parole board to judge. But I can't thank you enough for seeing me. And I know the presiding counsel, she knows the distance and that you came to Watertown. And I'm always grateful for that. And
glad to come here.
Learn about your family and about you. And I think I think what you learned from your mother and father, and it wasn't easy, and coming to this country and everything that they went through. What would you say in essence about what your parents had instilled in you?
It may take some time, but I still work hard every day to be as good of a father that my father was to me and my mother.
But it shows in your kindness. And when I saw that, we don't always see that, how when someone's nominated, what they do with their clients, and that was your priority, that you wanted to make sure that they would have representation and that you followed up on all of that. That shows that you care. So I don't have a poker face. I am so proud that you're here, and I'll be voting for you. Thank you so much, Counselor.
Thank you. Counselor Duff.
Thank you very much. I had a great long talk with you. Shame on you for forgetting your brother.
I know. And I really am going to have to.
Wait, between the two of you, you have the exact name that my grandfather from Italy had. So and then I found out I'm practically related, right? We have relatives in the same village. Listen, I'm not gonna belabor this with a lot more. Part of our job is to vet you privately, right? It's not just to put on a show here. It's to do our work and make sure we've asked you the tough questions and that you've answered them and get back to you again and again and again if we need to do that. And we all do it, albeit some of us differently. And I'm really satisfied with the answers you gave me and frankly, the discussion that we had. Someone, and I honestly can't remember who it was, besides Counselor Judge Hurley, who's a fan, but someone from the western part of the state called me and said, complete superstar, like we couldn't have picked somebody else better than you. And we need folks. I mean, I know we're going to have you on the circuit, but we need the western part of our state has been Judge Hurley has advocated hard and deep for it, but I do feel like you've been neglected and your courts have been, I'm getting some yeses over this, some yeses. I think you have been, and I think we need to do a better job. And I will say on the record, and I've said it many times, I don't think we should be repairing the Springfield courthouse. I think we should blow it up and build a new one, because you cannot retrofit that building to be ADA compliant and to have the technology that we need today. I think it is so misguided. I know you have nothing to do with this, but since we're being recorded and we're on the record, I think it is imperative that people in our positions advocate for every single court in the state, and I think Springfield has been neglected over and over. No fault of Judge Hurley's, let me tell you that. She has been an adamant advocate for you folks, but whoever's making these calls, I have not heard one single person say it's the right decision. And anyway, so that's that. No more questions. Thank you, Judge. It was my speech.
Thank you. Counselor Paulo.
I'll just have a couple questions. Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
So I'll just pile on to praising Counselor Hurley. She's done an amazing job of advocating for your region. I'm ending my first term, but I would say that Counselor Hurley's district has gotten the best batch of judges since I've been on. People who unanimous support from the bar community. A lot of other positive factors in that group as well. So I appreciate that, and I hope to one day be able to deliver that for Worcester, because it is so important that we have folks who the bar community welcomes and embraces. And I know that you know that we notice when there's someone who slips through who doesn't. And I know in Worcester we notice. And so we would love to have a slate of judges Counselor Hurley has advocated for. So I do want to ask you just a couple of questions about your philosophy. I too have fielded many phone calls about you, positive. And so we've heard a lot, but to get to hone in on a couple of things. So one of the letters and speaking to the testimony we heard today that was submitted on your behalf indicated that you understand the role that probation plays in many cases, helping offenders get their lives back on track. And I'm wondering, what is that role that it plays? Are there instances where probationary conditions can be counterproductive to folks getting their life on track?
I believe they could be if too many conditions are put on somebody. I think probation should serve to help and rehabilitate somebody, and I don't think anyone should ever be set up to fail.
Do you, in personal experience or anecdotal, I mean, are there have you encountered situations where conditions made it perhaps practically difficult for a defendant or for an individual?
Yes, I've encountered some of those conditions.
What would be a hypothetical example of that in your mind?
Well, I know that there's an anger management program that's mandated if.
Speak up a tiny bit.
I know there's an anger management program that's mandated. I know that there's a cost to that program, and that we're just starting to try and get it and work through that. But that can essentially set up someone to fail. I think doing away with the $65 a month probation supervision fee was absolutely huge. I think that helps indigent people. I think it helps defendants. And I think that's a very positive thing.
$65 is a lot to some people in some situations in their life, right? So, and then the other question I wanted to ask you, actually two others. One is, what's your understanding, or how would you describe the way that brain development overlaps with the work of the district court?
District court, sir?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I don't have an extensive knowledge of that, but I have become aware that, you know, between 18 and 24 years old is when a brain fully develops. And I know, like in Hampden County, they have the each court now. And I think that that's huge, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
I've heard good things about it. So I guess on that idea of brain development, in your application, you wrote, you were asked if you favor further limits on discretion, judicial discretion on sentencing. You said you would follow existing guidelines in regard to sentencing, and I just want to make sure I understand what you mean by that. Do you mean the actual promulgated guidelines from Superior Court, or do you mean the statutory?
Statutory, sir.
Okay. So would there be mitigating factors that you'd consider or aggregating factors when you are crafting a sentence?
I think rehabilitation should be first and foremost in any sentence in the district court, sir.
So do I infer then that substance abuse disorder, or to my earlier question, executive function and brain development, are those mitigating factors when considering a sentence?
I would agree with that statement, yes.
In other words, if someone's behavior that manifests and causes one to find oneself in district court, if it's manifesting as a result of a mental health disorder, for example, is that a mitigating factor in your sentencing? So I guess that's what I'm getting at. And likewise, age of the defendant, is that a mitigating factor, or how do you factor those things?
I would suggest that that would have to be, and I would try and work a sentence that works with that to help rehabilitate.
Okay. How would you go about doing that? What would be some of the directions you'd take?
I think I would take suggestions in regards to what the probation had to offer, defense attorney and Commonwealth had to offer in regard to some conditions, and I would take them all into account.
As I said, I have good feelings about you. I've spoken to a lot of people about you. I'll probably speak with you before the assembly vote, but I appreciate your time and I feel very good about your nomination.
Thank you, sir.
Right. I don't believe there's any other questions for you except mine. The first question is, how come you donate money to other people and not to me?
Comes the hard stuff.
Probably because I never asked you. I know if I had, you would have.
I would, Your Honor, but as you know, I'm not a very political person.
You're not a political person, which is one of the reasons why you have always, well, the way you got here was because, first of all, when you came in the first time you came into Chicopee District Court and introduced yourself as Nicola Gioscia, I knew your father, and I knew what a wonderful person he was, how much time he gave to the community, to his public service. And I knew your mom as well, wonderful, wonderful lady. But the reason that you were so effective in front of me, and you could always get what you wanted out of me.
Not always, just.
Never asked for that which was foolish, unreasonable, all right, or out of the realm of possibility. Didn't make speeches that had nothing to do with anything but your client and why you were asking for what you did. And you were probably one of the most effective defense attorneys that I had in front of me during my career in the district court.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The fact that you were at Chicopee District Court made my job easier because I knew when you walked through that door, you were being totally prepared. You would know the law. You would have talked to your client, done your homework. And if you were just sitting there waiting and I had some kind of an issue, say litigant, or something came up with a witness who had a Fifth Amendment issue, you were there. I'm going to suspend. Councilor Iannella, do you have any questions?
No questions. Strong support of yours, Councilor Hurley. No questions. No questions.
I had, my first question to him was why he contributed political campaign money to everybody but me. I'm only joking. In his entire life, he only gave $50 to one person twice, and I think, what, $30 to somebody else? So I wouldn't call him a political person at all. It's been a pleasure. I am happy that you're basically the last nominee that will come through for our region. And I think you're one of the best. The letters that were from all of the judges, including Judge Freeman, Judge Cafaro, Judge Sanabria Vega, who you appear in front of all the time, Judge McKenna, and Judge Santinello, and the lawyers that also wrote letters, tells me what high respect you are regarded with in our region. The fact that you're going to be a circuit judge doesn't mean you're going to be coming down to Boston every week. What it means is that you will be assigned to the courts in Western Mass in Region 6, which is the judicial region, which is also Region 8, where you're needed, daily or weekly basis, and for jury trials and what have you. Councilor Farrar, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I think you got to make a remarkable judge, and I vote next week because you told me what to do, Mary, again.
Councilor Kennedy, do you have any questions?
Comment, and I apologize, I had to step out to do some other business. You're a great candidate. You have a great background. The fact that you've been doing defense work for a long time, emphasized a lot, but working a lot of prosecutors. I don't believe that's accurate. I think it's pretty balanced, but I'm happy to vote for you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so without further ado,
Just one other comment. Your counselor has been a huge source. One of the treasures that I take away from my time on the governor's council is that I became friends with Mary Hurley.
and you're not only a treasure, you're a real work of art.
I am gonna miss those shots.
This hearing is declared over with. Congratulations. Will be voted on next week, December 7th.